The Inman family appeared to embody the ideal of harmony to outsiders, attending church regularly every Sunday in a small Ohio town. Yet behind closed doors, their story was far more complex. William and Sandra Inman met at church when he was 18 and she 16, and their union was blessed by their parents, leading to marriage. They settled in the modest community of Logan, located in Hawking County, Ohio. Bill, a man of strong religious beliefs, balanced his work in construction with playing musical instruments at the local evangelical church in Nelsonville. Sandra took on the role of managing their household. In Adna tisiacha deviatsot vosum desiat ceterae, the couple celebrated the birth of their son William Jr., whom they called Will to distinguish him from his father. As Will grew, he formed a close friendship with a girl named Summer Cook, whom he met at church when he was 17 and she 15. Their friendship lasted 3 years before they married when Summer turned 18. The newlyweds moved into a spacious family home in Logan, living with Will's parents. In that same year, Bill, then 39, began to see himself as a spiritual guide. He transformed his garage into a makeshift sanctuary, hosting gatherings despite local skepticism. Over time, his enigmatic activities drew neighbors and friends, seeking comfort through prayer and offerings. By DVA Tisiachi Piat, Will and Summer were overjoyed with the birth of their son Alex. Financial difficulties soon arose as Bill's religious pursuits did not generate income, prompting the family to consider relocating for better opportunities. By DVE Tisiaki Shest, they had moved to Florida, where Bill and Will found work in hotel construction. Meanwhile, Sandra and Summer focused on caring for their young children, Alex and later Kelly, born in DV Tisiachi Vosem, followed by Alana in DV Tisiachi Desiet. During these years, the young family often took weekends for rest and renewal, with Bill and Sandra always supporting each other through life's challenges. In the spring of 2010, I spent weekends caring for my grandchildren, filling those days with happiness as we cherished precious moments together. During that same year, Bill Amon obtained his pastor's license and declared himself the leader of the Skyner Faith Church. Alongside his wife, he founded a charitable organization called Ranch of Mercy, aimed at helping the unemployed and homeless. His vision was ambitious, to build a large shelter for orphans and widows. However, lacking sufficient funds, Bill devised a lottery scheme to raise the necessary capital. Participants would buy tickets, with all proceeds dedicated to constructing the shelter. The grand prize was either a house or $200,000, complemented by 99 other substantial rewards. The community learned about the lottery through media and advertisements, and Bill promoted it door to door, assuring potential buyers of luxurious prizes. He emphasized that any surplus funds would go toward creating a haven for those in need. Each ticket cost $10, and Bill successfully sold 100,000 tickets, raising $1 million for the project. The drawing was scheduled for September of that year. In June, personal turmoil struck the Inman family when Summer expressed her desire to end her marriage after 6 years. This revelation followed a heartfelt entry in her personal diary, where she wrote about her exhaustion from constantly trying to please others. She questioned whether she deserved happiness or the right to love and be loved in return. She felt compelled to share her feelings with Will, despite the difficulty, because he deserved to know the truth. Summer confessed her need to be alone, to rediscover herself and understand her current identity. She described feeling like a servant, always obeying others' commands. Her love for her children was unwavering, yet she worried about their future witnessing her perpetual compliance. She feared Will's reaction, anger, attempts to take the children away, or worse, threats or harm. She believed it was vital for her children to see their parents as equals. She anticipated that Will's parents might try to persuade her to stay, but she felt such efforts wouldn't change her decision. One night, when Will asked what she wanted, her mind was blank. All she could think about was what she did not want. She no longer wished to feel trapped or unhappy. Yet she couldn't voice these feelings, so she sat in silence. Every day felt like a struggle, and all she longed for was rest, tears, and sleep without interruption. Despite the overwhelming circumstances, she hoped that by her next journal entry, she would find clarity on how to resolve everything. As the summer went on, The family moved forward with the divorce process, leaving the Inman residence behind. In the aftermath of their separation, I took our son, both daughters, and my personal belongings to my parents' home, aiming to preserve the children's relationship with their father and grandparents. Regular visits were arranged for them, even 2 months after the breakup in August of that year. During this period, I began a new relationship with Adam Peters and found work at a bank in Logan's downtown area, primarily in cleaning, due to my limited educational background. September marked another pivotal moment when the Mercy's House raffle, organized by the Inman family, was supposed to commence construction on the prize house. However, both September and October passed without any progress or explanation, and the raffle never took place. The organization also did not promptly refund the participants, leaving many in uncertainty. By December 1st, the Inmans received a notice to vacate their rented residence due to unpaid rent, which prompted Summer and Adam to go to retrieve her remaining belongings from the Inman home. They were denied entry, leading Summer to call the police, reporting that her estranged husband was intimidating her and blocking access. When law enforcement arrived, Will and his parents continued to obstruct her, with Will escalating the situation by threatening Adam and clashing with officers. As a result, Summer filed a formal complaint against Will. She reflected on their relationship, recalling its initial idyllic nature before marriage, but lamenting how drastically it changed afterwards. Will's behavior reportedly became highly controlling, affecting her diet, household duties, and even intimate aspects of their life. She was not permitted to sleep without his approval and was confined at home, cut off from her phone and keys. Summer also revealed Will's ambitions for a large family, his interest in polygamy, and his activities on related websites, including posting inappropriate images. She disclosed threats he made if she pursued divorce and mentioned the mysterious disappearance of her cats, which she believed had simply escaped through an open window. Will justified taking her phone and keys, suspecting her of infidelity, and claimed the cats were relocated to a shelter due to their unruly behavior and damage caused to furniture and others. These conflicts led to Will being issued a restraining order, barring him from approaching Summer, and he faced legal penalties and probation. Amid ongoing investigations, a fierce custody dispute erupted between the families. The Inmans filed a police report against Adam Peters, alleging he posed a potential threat to the safety of Alex and Alana. Tragically, Summer's life took a tragic turn on the night of March 22, 2011. At just 25 years old, she was finishing her shift at the bank after completing her cleaning duties around 11 o'clock in the evening. One evening, she stepped outside to discard some trash. Summer had messaged her partner, Adam, to meet her after work, but by 11:30 at night, he couldn't find her. Concerned, Adam went to the bank where she worked and began searching. Near a dumpster in an alley, he found her personal belongings scattered, her phone, keys, and a music player still playing with headphones in the grass. Her jacket lay nearby. Alarmed, Adam immediately contacted Summer's parents to inform them of her disappearance and emphasized the urgency of involving the police. Initially, her parents called the bank, assuming she might have stayed late or misplaced her things. Security personnel had no information about her whereabouts. They then reported her missing to the local authorities, highlighting her usual punctuality and rare tendency to stay late. When police arrived at the scene, they examined her belongings and spoke with 3 witnesses who had seen her about an hour earlier. 2 women out for an evening jog reported seeing Summer as she was throwing out the trash when a white Ford Crown Victoria, driven by a blonde woman, approached. 2 individuals dressed in black balaclavas exited the vehicle, forcibly grabbing Summer and shoving her into the back seat. Despite her protests and attempts to resist, they quickly drove away. One witness tried to intervene but was sprayed with pepper spray by the female driver, forcing him to retreat. The vehicle sped off, leaving no trace. The joggers immediately went to the nearest police station to report what they had seen. Initially, law enforcement was skeptical, finding their account unusual and questioning its credibility, suspecting it might be fabricated. However, just an hour after Summer's parents filed the missing person report, police arrived at the abduction site. Despite their efforts, they did not locate her. News of her disappearance spread rapidly through local media, capturing the community's attention. Hundreds of residents united in their efforts to find her. As days passed, 3 in total, the chances of her being found safe diminished. Throughout this distressing period, her parents clung to hope, battling despair. Shortly before her disappearance, Summer had shared a photo on social media showing herself with her new partner Adam and her children, presenting a picture of a happy family. Interestingly, Adam, who had been hired by the Inman family a year earlier for household chores, was still listed as a friend on her Facebook profile, despite being her current partner. This detail raised questions about their relationship, especially considering Adam's unstable employment history. Their connection began in spring of 2010, when Summer and Adam met and formed a bond despite her initial reluctance. Over time, she reciprocated his feelings and their relationship deepened. Her diary reveals an inner turmoil, echoing her conflicted feelings. When I looked into his eyes, I sensed an evil presence overtaking me. I ignored divine guidance, despite my mind screaming to escape. Instead, I stayed, allowing him to hold me and deepen the connection. I deeply regret this, feeling guilty for what transpired. This encounter marked the beginning of Summer's unraveling within the Inman family. Driven by a desire for happiness and love, she initiated divorce proceedings, which dragged on for 5 days. During this time, Vanishing Will challenged the proposed support arrangements, suggesting a reduction to $50 per child monthly, citing his modest annual income of $6,000. His parents sought full custody of the children, but their request was denied by the court. After losing contact with their grandchildren, Bill and Sandra visibly deteriorated, losing weight and showing clear signs of distress. Those familiar with them agreed that the grandchildren were their greatest joy. In March of 2011, amid the investigation into Summer's disappearance, the Inman family was located at Bill's 78-year-old mother's home in Jackson, Ohio. They claimed ignorance about Summer's abduction. The Inmans explained that on the night of her disappearance, they were en route to Cleveland to view a new property, but encountered car trouble after 3 hours, leading to an overnight roadside repair. They returned to Logan the following morning. They described their interactions with Summer as generally amicable, with only occasional disagreements. However, they attributed a change in family harmony to Adam Peters' presence, describing this period as difficult. The family consistently portrayed Adam as a negative influence, blaming him for the breakdown of their previously close-knit relationship. The investigation shifted when officers noticed a white Ford Crown Victoria parked at the Inman residence. A GPS device was seized from the vehicle, and analysis revealed that on March 22nd, the day Summer was taken, the car was in Logan. The GPS was turned off at 5:30 p.m. that evening and reactivated the next morning, also in Logan. This contradicted the Inman's claim of traveling to Cleveland. Phone records further confirmed that all 3 family members remained in Logan on both March 22nd and 23rd. Additional inquiries showed that on the morning of March 23rd, around 7:30 a.m., the family was still in Logan, raising questions about their involvement. The Inman family was engaged in a detailed interior cleaning of their vehicle at a car wash, with Bill, Sandra, and Will present, though Summer was noticeably absent. Following this, they visited an auto repair shop in Cleveland to change their tires. Interestingly, an employee at the shop observed that Bill was opting to replace nearly new tires with used ones, simply because he disliked his current set. There was also evidence indicating that the family had attempted to alter the car's appearance, notably with Bill removing a police-style spotlight mounted on the driver's side door. Soon after, Bill, Sandra, and Will Inman were detained and taken in for questioning. Before their arrest, Bill assured his elderly mother that they were innocent, attributing the situation to a test from the devil. Throughout the interrogation, they repeatedly claimed ignorance regarding Summer Inman's disappearance and denied any knowledge of the kidnapper. However, after several hours and facing the threat of severe penalties if convicted, Sandra's resolve weakened. She ultimately confessed that they were responsible for Summer's abduction. In her detailed account, Sandra explained that on the night of March 22nd, Bill and Will had disguised themselves with black masks. She initially intended only to abduct and intimidate Summer, but the situation quickly spiraled out of control. According to her confession, Will restrained Summer with plastic ties around her neck, wrists, and ankles, aiming merely to frighten her into cooperation for access to their children. As the ordeal progressed, Will realized Summer was nearing unconsciousness and panicked. Desperately searching for a knife, he shouted to his mother, "Oh my God, Mom, where's the knife? I can't find it." Amidst their collective fear and frantic search, Summer stopped breathing and tragically passed away. Sandra insisted that their goal was never to cause her harm. They only wanted to resolve their custody issues and ensure regular visits with their grandchildren. A week after the kidnapping, on March 29th, Sandra Inman revealed the location of Summer's remains. Her body was discovered in a septic tank on the grounds of Skinnier Faith Church near Nelsonville, about 30 kilometers from her workplace. Bill Inman had been involved in the church's construction, which held personal significance for both him and Sandra, as it was where they had married 28 years earlier. The Inmans were long-standing members of the church, with Bill participating in its musical ensemble. Authorities uncovered the septic tank by removing a concrete slab and unscrewing 6 bolts from the metal lid. Upon opening it, they immediately saw Summer's legs, her body thrown headfirst into the tank while she was still dressed in her work clothes. Her black t-shirt bore an ironic inscription, "I don't have anger issues, I have issues with idiots." A forensic investigation confirmed that Summer had been strangled, with marks on her neck, hands, and legs indicating she had been restrained. No other injuries were found on her body, pointing clearly to strangulation as the cause of her tragic death. Sandra initially planned to dispose of Summer's body in a nearby river, but later decided it would be safer to hide it in a well near the church, believing this spot would keep it concealed for a long time. She expressed deep shame for her actions and their irreversible impact during the trial. Throughout the proceedings, Sorak Deviat-year-old Bill Inman and Devadsat Vosam-year-old Will Inman remained mostly silent, showing no emotion or eye contact with Summer's grieving parents. In contrast, Sandra, who was 47, was the only family member to accept responsibility, insisting that her decision to intimidate Summer was entirely her own. In a tearful and trembling voice, she begged for forgiveness from Summer's parents, her remorse evident despite her broken speech. Sandra saw Summer as a daughter and deeply regretted her catastrophic choice. In the end, the court sentenced all 3 family members. Bill and Will Inman received life sentences without the possibility of parole, while Sandra also received a life term but with the chance for parole after 15 years. Many friends and church members familiar with the family's dynamics questioned whether Sandra was truly the mastermind. It was widely understood that Bill held a dominant role, often making final decisions, and Will was seen as a spoiled child whose wishes were always fulfilled. Some believed Sandra's confession might have been a strategic move to lessen her legal consequences, possibly to benefit her husband and son. Currently, Summer's family is raising Alex and Alana, who have struggled to understand where their mother, father, grandmother, and grandfather have gone. On May 18th, 2012, at 5 o'clock in the evening, Max received an urgent call from his close friend, Jonathan Hoffman. 2 students from Farmington Central High School, located in the affluent West Bloomfield area near Detroit, Michigan, had formed a close friendship during their 9th grade year in an English class. Their bond was rooted in a shared admiration for Tupac Shakur, one of the most influential figures in American hip-hop. One day, Jonathan confided in Max that he had recently failed a court-ordered drug test. He had been on probation for 2 months after authorities discovered a synthetic substance in his vehicle. Jonathan also expressed frustration over his grandmother Sandra's intense anger towards him. At 17, Jonathan had been living with his grandparents for 9 months following his parents' divorce and their move to Arizona. Initially, he had gone with his parents, but their family was soon struck by tragedy when his younger sister Jessica was diagnosed with a benign brain tumor. The diagnosis required multiple surgeries and ongoing medical attention. Adjusting to a new school while managing his sister's health left Jonathan feeling deeply unhappy and despondent. When his grandmother Sandra suggested he return to West Bloomfield to stay with her until graduation, Jonathan was overjoyed. The idea of reconnecting with friends and familiar surroundings filled him with hope. However, not everyone approved of this arrangement. Jonathan's father, Michael, a well-known attorney, had noticed some concerning traits in Sandra's personality. Sandra Lane, age 74, was a retired educator and mother of 5. Despite her deep love for her grandson and her 85-year-old husband, Fred, her stern nature sometimes created tension. The situation was complicated by the teenagers' desire to reconnect with friends during what should have been their final year at Farmington Central High School. Eventually, Jonathan's father agreed to let him return to his old school, where he was known as the class clown, a bright student, and a tech enthusiast. He had earned a full scholarship to Eastern Michigan University. His classmates saw him as lively, cheerful, and optimistic. That's why Max was alarmed when Jonathan called him. His voice sounded different, marked by concern and a clear sense of fear. The friends planned to meet later that day, and Jonathan promised to text within 30 minutes to confirm the time. Max waited for the message, but 40 minutes passed without any word. Growing anxious, he decided to call Jonathan directly. The phone rang repeatedly, but there was no response. Tragically, at that moment, Jonathan would never be able to reply again. Just before this incident, around 5:20 p.m., the West Bloomfield Township Police responded to a distress call from Sandra Lane's residence, the home of Jonathan's grandmother. The young caller urgently reported that he had been shot and was struggling to breathe, pleading for help over a span of 3 minutes, during which he expressed that he was near the point of losing consciousness. The assailant had already fled the scene without offering aid. What followed was even more disturbing. The dispatcher listened as Jonathan desperately called out for assistance before several gunshots rang out again. His screams of pain were soon replaced by faint words indicating he was nearing his end. Then a brief silence was broken by a woman's scream, plunging the line into an unsettling quiet. By around 5:30 in the evening, police officers arrived at Sandra Lane's condo, located in the peaceful Maple Point gated community, an area known for its low crime rate and mostly inhabited by retirees. A resident had reported hearing gunfire in this normally tranquil neighborhood. As the officers stepped onto the well-maintained lawn, another gunshot echoed from inside the residence. Before they could enter, a woman appeared at the front door. She was a small, elderly woman with fading red hair, bloodstains on her clothes, and her hands raised in surrender. She told the officers she had just taken her grandson's life. This revelation stunned the officers, but what they encountered inside was even more horrifying. The condo was a scene of chaos. Bloodstains and smudges covered nearly every room. Bullet impacts marred the walls and furniture, and empty shell casings littered the floor. Near the entrance, they found a discarded 9mm Glock 17 semi-automatic pistol. Forensic analysis later revealed additional magazines hidden within the residence. On the upper floor, officers discovered 17-year-old Jonathan Hoffman lying face down in a pool of blood. He had multiple gunshot wounds to his chest, arms, back, and stomach, indicating that many shots had been fired at close range. Emergency medical teams quickly transported him to Botsford Hospital, holding on to hope for his survival. Sadly, by 6 o'clock that evening, it became clear that his injuries were too severe. Jonathan's injuries proved fatal, and Sandra was swiftly transported to the nearest medical facility as a precaution. Medical professionals conducted thorough examinations to ensure her well-being. The following day, Sandra Lane faced charges for her grandson's death and was held without bail while awaiting trial on charges of either first or second-degree homicide. Her guilt was to be determined by a jury, and throughout the process she maintained her innocence. This tragic event cast a pall over Jonathan's family, friends, and neighbors, leaving them in profound sorrow and disbelief. Many wondered what could have led Sandra to take such drastic action against someone she loved dearly. News of the incident spread quickly through the quiet neighborhood, with media outlets speculating about possible motives. Rumors suggested that Jonathan had failed a drug test, and stories emerged about 2 neglectful parents who left their teenage son dependent on substances in the care of elderly grandparents. According to Sandra's testimony, Jonathan had been using an illegal synthetic drug at the time of his death, a substance that had previously caused health complications for him. His passing followed a recent incident involving hallucinogen use just 2 weeks earlier, when another young person under the influence attacked their family with a baseball bat, resulting in a fatal outcome. It was reported that both teens had consumed prohibited substances before their violent acts. Sandra's lawyer argued that her actions might have been driven by concerns for her safety, given her responsibility for a young man on probation who was difficult to control. The drug involved was known to potentially induce aggressive behavior, raising the question of whether Sandra's response could be viewed as self-defense. She claimed that since Jonathan's return to West Bloomfield, he had become unruly and aggressive. She described him as rarely leaving the house and associating with teenagers involved with dangerous synthetic drugs. Furthermore, Sandra stated that Jonathan's parents had not disclosed his drug use before his arrival and showed little interest in his activities during his stay. Jonathan's father, Michael, was portrayed as having abandoned him. Witnesses described Jonathan as prone to violent outbursts, during which he would destroy objects and damage furniture in his room. When upset or in disputes, he often lashed out, even breaking his own possessions like his computer monitor and phone. Authorities confirmed that Jonathan had a history of illegal substance use, noting that he had been caught in March of 2011 for possessing hallucinogenic drugs. He received a deferred sentence of 93 days, along with a year of probation and mandatory random drug tests. Law enforcement and acquaintances expressed concerns about Jonathan's ongoing drug habit, highlighting the risks associated with his behavior and substance use. Sandra dedicated significant effort to help Jonathan change his ways, focusing on improving his academic performance and encouraging him to follow her guidance. Despite her persistence, he consistently resisted her attempts, often displaying defiance, unpredictable behavior, and occasional outbursts. Fred confirmed that from the moment Jonathan arrived, tensions between him and Sandra were ongoing and intense, leading her to contact authorities multiple times due to his increasingly uncontrollable conduct. She also sought support from the school, but all efforts proved unsuccessful. Sandra recalled an incident where Jonathan, under the influence of substances, lost complete control, requiring hospital staff to restrain him on a gurney. She pleaded with his parents for help, but his father remained indifferent and did not return to Michigan. Over time, Sandra grew increasingly worried about her safety, confiding in her husband about her concerns regarding their grandson and his questionable associates. To protect herself and her elderly husband, she decided to acquire a Glock 17 pistol for self-defense in case Jonathan or his friends became threatening. On the morning of May 18, 2012, Lane took Jonathan for a drug test, which came back positive for illegal substances. A second test later that day also yielded a positive result. Enraged, Jonathan became violent in his grandmother's car, swearing loudly, kicking the dashboard, and grabbing the steering wheel, forcing Sandra to stop the vehicle multiple times. He even tried to snatch the car keys at one point. When they returned home, the confrontation escalated. Fearing he might be punished or detained, Jonathan demanded $2,000 in the car keys, but Sandra refused. While her husband Fred was walking the dog, Sandra, overwhelmed with fear, tried to calm her grandson without success. She retreated to her bedroom, retrieved the loaded pistol, hoping it would make him listen or at least acknowledge her presence. Returning to Jonathan's room, she found him in the bathroom. Instead of responding to her, he hurled insults, kicked her in the stomach, and struck her on the head. A struggle ensued, during which Sandra discharged the firearm and then fled to the basement, seeking refuge. After some time, she returned upstairs to check on him, only to be assaulted again. In the chaos, she attempted to take the gun away from him, and in her defense, she fired again. This account depicts elderly individuals caught in a tragic situation, ultimately leading Sandra to shoot her grandson out of genuine fear for her safety. However, questions remain about whether Lane's version of events is entirely accurate. As the investigation progressed, a different narrative emerged, one that, while still tragic, raised concerns. Initial claims by Sandra about Jonathan's violent tendencies did not align with the experiences of those who knew him well. Contrary to portraying him as aggressive, interviews revealed that at school, Jonathan was known for his humor and peaceful nature. He was quick to diffuse conflicts with wit and intelligence, and friends reported no recent changes in his demeanor. Additionally, Jonathan was described as having a very slender build, standing at just 1 meter 70 centimeters. Despite standing just over 67 meters tall and weighing only 50 kilograms, Jonathan's slender frame bore a striking resemblance to his grandmother's, making him appear physically unthreatening. His so-called episodes of rage were primarily reported by Sandra, a claim now viewed with skepticism. Fred, Sandra's husband, acknowledged witnessing heated exchanges between his wife and grandson, yet he was present at home almost constantly and never saw any physical violence. Sandra played a central role in supervising Jonathan's education, setting strict standards that the teenager often struggled to meet. Fred even suggested returning Jonathan to his parents in Arizona, but Sandra refused, insisting she could manage him. Contradicting her earlier statements about his unruliness, Jennifer, Sandra's daughter, told police that during the 9 months Jonathan stayed with his grandparents, he maintained daily contact with her and visited monthly. Throughout this period, Sandra never reported any issues or expressed feeling overwhelmed by his presence. When Jennifer learned about Jonathan's legal issues involving substances, she discussed options with her mother, considering either rehabilitation or sending him back to Arizona. Sandra convinced her daughter she could handle the situation alone, leading Jennifer to reluctantly leave her son in her parents' custody, a decision that would later have tragic consequences. Authorities responded twice to the Lane household. The first incident occurred in March of 2012 when Jonathan called emergency services after consuming magic mushrooms and experiencing severe paranoia, fearing for his life. Police arriving at the scene noted he was not aggressive but terrified, eagerly embracing one officer before being placed on a stretcher and taken to medical care. Just 4 days later, Sandra contacted emergency services again, reporting that her grandson was enraged and attempting to flee, claiming he was being forcibly confined in her vehicle. Officers found Jonathan vocally berating his grandmother, but Sandra chose to handle the situation herself. This incident was recorded as a routine dispute, yet investigators began to see it as more than typical teenage rebellion, viewing it as a woman exerting control over a defiant child. On April 12th, during a hearing regarding possession of illegal substances in probation, Sandra's anger appeared to intensify. She believed she could discipline Jonathan effectively, but as graduation approached and her influence waned, her efforts seemed to falter. Faced with limited options, she could have contacted her daughter or sought rehabilitation, but instead, she acquired a semi-automatic pistol and took shooting lessons at a range, determined to dominate her grandson through force if necessary. Following Jonathan's placement on probation, Sandra applied for a firearm license on April 18th. She purchased a 9mm Glock, explaining to the store clerk that she needed it for home defense. She selected a weapon designed for lethal force, along with expanding bullets intended to cause maximum damage. After training at the shooting range until confident in her handling, she kept her new skill hidden from her husband, who remained unaware of the gun's existence. He was stunned when he discovered how much she had managed to achieve covertly. On the evening of May 18, 2012, Sandra and Jonathan returned home around 5 o'clock. Sandra then asked her husband Fred to take their dog for a walk, insisting he stay outside until she allowed him to return. Their outdoor time stretched so long that both the homeowner and the dog grew tired, eventually sitting together on the grass watching a basketball game. During an interview, Fred Wayne, the grandfather of the high schooler involved, recounted that when they heard police sirens, he didn't understand the situation. It seemed more like Sandra was executing a plan, rather than acting out of fear, aiming to carry out her intentions without interference or witnesses. If Jonathan had been as upset as his grandmother described, it's unlikely Fred would have left them alone. Yet, more telling evidence against Sandra was yet to emerge. At around 5 o'clock in the evening, Jonathan was speaking with his friend Max about their plans for the evening. Max told police that Jonathan's tone was not angry or excited, but frightened. He expressed concern about failing a drug test and worried about his grandmother's reaction. Jonathan also mentioned that Sandra was so furious she threatened to send him back to Arizona. Sandra claimed that her grandson had violently assaulted her, hitting her in the head and abdomen before she discharged her firearm. Medical personnel from the nearby hospital examined her immediately afterward, but found no injuries or bruises. Ballistic evidence showed Sandra fired her weapon more than 10 times in various parts of the house. 2 bullets struck Jonathan, with one shot aimed at his back as he tried to escape, and another hitting his abdomen while he was wounded and speaking with a deviatio ordinanza dispatcher. Police believed that Sandra was the one pursuing Jonathan, not the other way around. It appeared she sought to punish her grandson for what she perceived as wrongdoing, while he sought refuge. At some point, she went to the basement to reload her pistol, likely when Jonathan went upstairs to call emergency services, then returned to shoot him at close range as he lay injured on the floor. The final piece of evidence undermining Sandra's claim of self-defense was the toxicology report. It showed that at the time of the shooting, Jonathan's bloodstream contained no illegal substances, only a metabolite of a harmful drug in his urine. The forensic expert explained that this residue indicated all substances had left his system and did not influence his behavior. In other words, Jonathan was fully conscious and lucid when Sandra fired at him. As a result, the jury dismissed her self-defense argument. On March 19th of 2013, Sandra Lane was convicted of a serious crime against her grandson, Jonathan Hoffman. Before sentencing, the elderly woman expressed remorse for her actions, pleading for understanding. She insisted that her intent was not to take the teenager's life. In the midst of a tense situation, efforts were made to help him address his problems collaboratively. Meanwhile, his daughter Jennifer demanded the harshest possible punishment for her mother, asserting that Sandra Lane was inherently malevolent and would likely repeat her actions if given the chance. Jennifer portrayed her mother as a monstrous, obsessive figure obsessed with academic success, firmly believing that all of Lay's claims were falsehoods. She concluded by stating that her son now rests in a peaceful place where Sandra would never reach him. Sandra Lane received a minimum sentence of 20 years, with an additional 2-year mandatory term for using a weapon during the act. Her lawyer argued on her behalf, expressing concerns about her ability to survive an extended prison sentence. Jonathan's funeral took place on May 22, 2012, attended by around 700 friends and family members who remembered him fondly. They recalled his cheerful nature and how he always brought joy and laughter to those around him. As a grandson, Jonathan's life had fallen short of his grandmother's expectations, leading her to believe he did not belong in this world. Meanwhile, Jordan chased Zara for about half a mile, driven by relentless malice. Unaware of the danger, Zara continued her walk, unsuspecting that evil was closing in. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness like a specter, grabbing her by the neck and covering her mouth to prevent her from screaming. He restricted her breathing and dragged her into the forest's shadows, where darkness and inhumanity awaited. In that forgotten corner of the world, Zara faced unimaginable horror as her attacker violated her, leaving her with only a scream of pain and terror lost in the night. Despite her desperate resistance, her cries went unanswered in the ruthless void. The entire ordeal lasted 9 minutes, feeling like an eternity to Zara, who was overwhelmed by fear and despair. Afterward, Jordan returned home, leaving behind only traces of destruction and chaos. But what if this was merely the beginning of an even darker, more mysterious story? What if the truth behind that terrible night was more confusing and sinister than it initially appeared? Secrets hidden deep in the shadows of the past can destroy lives and wipe out all remnants of hope and peace. Only by delving into these mysteries can the truth be uncovered, yet each answer often reveals more questions lurking beneath. In the winter of 1886, Zara Alina was born in the expansive landscapes of Great Britain. She was the eldest of 5 children raised by a single mother, a young woman who had mysteriously moved her life from the impoverished slums of Pakistan to this remote corner of the UK in 1968. Zara embodied her parents' hopes and dreams, representing a new beginning amid uncertain circumstances. Born as the first granddaughter of R. Parvan, Zara's arrival marked a significant milestone, granting her a special status within her community. From her earliest years, she was enveloped in the love and attention of relatives who elevated her to a pedestal, showering her with tenderness and care. Growing up amidst multiple generations, she was educated in a unique environment where life's lessons were often harsh and unpredictable, shaped by experiences of betrayal and hardship. Despite her family's limited financial resources, her parents invested everything into her education, convinced that it would open doors to a brighter future. Their hopes and dreams were unwavering, fueling her determination to succeed in a world filled with shadows and hidden dangers. From a young age, Zara's heart burned with passion and a zest for life. She immersed herself in tap dancing, where each movement became a note in a symphony of emotion, creating beauty and harmony. Swimming was another refuge, offering her a sense of liberation from the monotony of daily life and a taste of true freedom. Her style was always impeccable, as if she crafted her appearance as a living work of art, embodying her aspirations with every outfit. But her pursuit of freedom extended beyond fashion. When she first stepped onto skates, she felt a surge of exhilaration. As skating became more than a hobby, it was a vital expression of her innermost self. Those close to Zara knew her dreams extended beyond her passions. She aspired to become a lawyer, driven by a sincere desire to protect and support others. Her optimistic spirit shone brightly, like a beacon of hope amid darkness. Her lively eyes and radiant smile carried the promise of miracles, while her black curly hair seemed almost designed to tempt fate. Her charm was magnetic, a captivating blend of passion, kindness, and courage that made her truly extraordinary. By her teens, Zara had already traveled across England, exploring museums and galleries, revealing her deep interest in art and culture. These journeys underscored her independence and adventurous spirit, qualities she inherited from her family. Her Aunt Farah, who chose Portugal over the UK to pursue her career as a psychotherapist in women's organizations, served as an inspiring example. Zara often visited her, fascinated by her work and life choices, which further fueled her desire for exploration. After graduating from high school, Zara's ambitions began to materialize when she was accepted into the University of Westminster. Since then, she dedicated herself tirelessly to her goals, all while caring for her mother and grandmother. Her small stature belied her passionate nature and unstoppable energy. Her sense of justice and fairness extended beyond academic pursuits, inspiring her to support and uplift those around her, embodying the hope and resilience that defined her character. Born with a compassionate spirit, she dedicated herself to helping those fleeing violence, striving to amplify the voices of the less privileged. Her volunteer work extended to community centers, where she actively supported efforts to assist the homeless, always attentive to others' needs and eager to include them in her daily routines. Zara was a relaxed and cheerful girl, often visiting her Aunt Smin, who lived nearby, multiple times each week. While preparing for her exams, she would ask her aunt for study help, but their sessions often turned into moments of laughter and joy. Everywhere she went, Zara left a trail of happiness, a trait her acquaintances fondly remembered. She was diligent, covering her own expenses and contributing to her family's well-being. Working at a local clothing shop, she knew everyone in the neighborhood, from teenagers to seniors, and greeted each with warmth and readiness to assist. Despite her talkative nature, she was also an attentive listener, demonstrating genuine kindness. Her compassion extended beyond humans. She had a special fondness for cats, frequently spending her own money to take stray animals to the vet, caring for them at home, or persuading neighbors to adopt them. Her friend Sanji Naira described her as radiant, believing her greatest gift was her ability to spread optimism. When Sanji was down, he turned to Zara for comfort and encouragement. In her heart, Zara cherished a shining star named Carissa Peters, a true friend and partner in the fight for justice and women's rights. Their bond was so deep that they seemed to share a single soul, effortlessly entering each other's homes as if they were their own. They kept in close contact, talking almost daily about current events, their hopes and future plans. After passing her exams and completing her law internship in 2002, Zara seized the opportunity to work in the Crown Prosecution Service, a vital step toward her dream of becoming a fully qualified lawyer. Despite facing personal struggles, including concerns for her mother and grandmother and financial hardships, she worked tirelessly, driven by her ambitions and the support of those who believed in her. Her first day at her new job brought her immense joy. She sent a cheerful selfie to friends and family, as if announcing a new chapter in her life. This position was more than just a job. It was the final piece of her dream's mosaic. Though working as an administrator might seem minor for Zara, it marked a significant stride toward her ultimate goal. At the age of 35, she realized that every step, no matter how small, brought her closer to the future she envisioned. A new chapter was unfolding in her life, filling her with a thrill that made her pulse race. It wasn't just another day at work. It marked the dawn of a fresh era, one where she felt truly fulfilled and joyful. Her new job bolstered her confidence, reinforcing her desire to build her own family. She often envisioned her children's happiness, imagining a life where they would be safe, loved, and surrounded by harmony. In that moment, Zara understood that each new day was a step closer to her dream of a family and lasting happiness. Leading an active life filled with work, volunteering, friends, and the caring presence of her mother and grandmother, who shared a separate room in her home, she cherished her independence. Zara loved walking freely, moving without restrictions. She believed that women should have the right to move unencumbered, and that no one should take this freedom away from them. Yet near her house there was a man whose presence completely stripped her of that right. His name was Jordan McWeeny, a few years her junior, with an uncertain background. One Saturday evening after sunset, Zara was heading out to meet a friend. Despite feeling unwell, she refused to cancel her plans, holding firm to her promise. Her unwavering dedication to her commitments reflected her strong character, and she was prepared to face any challenge for her friends. Before leaving, she called her Aunt Farah, whose voice carried a hint of concern. Her aunt urged her to stay cautious, and Zara realized that even in her familiar neighborhood, the world could feel unpredictable and strange. Still, she reassured herself that she knew her city well and was recognized by many. Yet something about that evening made her heart beat faster, prompting her to stay alert. At the designated time, Zara met her friend at a lively local bar called the Ilford Big Spoon, situated in the vibrant and diverse district of Ilford in West London. This area was perfect for social gatherings, and that Saturday night they enjoyed their time there. Later, they moved to another bar where Zara sipped water while her friend drank. Meanwhile, Jordan was at a nearby nightclub, drinking repeatedly. An idea was forming in his mind, and he was determined to act on it. Surveillance footage showed him approaching women at the club entrance, hugging them without consent and attempting to kiss them. He was particularly insistent with one employee, despite her clear discomfort, and was eventually ejected from the club shortly after 11 o'clock. His inappropriate behavior was captured on security cameras as he exited the venue. Walking along Romford Street toward the park, Jordan followed a woman who was walking alone. When she tried to avoid him by entering a shop, he waited outside. As she cautiously left, he resumed following her, staying close as she moved down the street. When she reached her home, Jordan had no choice but to continue on his way. According to the surveillance footage, around 2 o'clock in the morning, his actions remained recorded as he walked away from the scene. On Cranbrook Street, Jordan suddenly noticed a woman approaching him. Sensing an opportunity, he quickened his pace to catch up. Despite his suspicious behavior, as captured on nearby surveillance footage, 2 witnesses passing by observed his unusual actions. Fortunately, the woman managed to return home safely, leaving Jordan feeling both surprised and irritated. Without success that evening, he returned to Cranbrook Street. Meanwhile, Zara and her friend, having left a bar at 2 in the morning, decided to head home separately. Her friend took a taxi for convenience, while Zara, preferring to walk in good weather and over a short distance, headed down the residential street. It was during her walk that Jordan noticed her. According to Chief Inspector Dave Williams, Jordan appeared to have a clear intention that night, seemingly planning to target a woman regardless of the location. Cranbrook Street, even in the early hours, was still busy with traffic, making it a common scene at that hour. By the age of 13, Jordan had already been convicted in Kent Juvenile Court for various offenses committed between DVE Tisiachi Shest and DVE Tisiachi Deviat. When he turned 17 in August Deviab Tisiachi Desiat, he was found guilty of assaulting a girl, leaving her with a swollen eye, and was sentenced to 4 months of detention and correction. Over the next 11 years, his criminal record grew to include 28 convictions for 69 crimes, such as theft, assaults on police and civilians, vehicle theft, traffic violations, and shoplifting. On social media, he boasted about his extensive collection of weapons and glorified a criminal lifestyle, posting photos and quotes that reflected his dangerous attitude. He even shared fake images claiming that the FBI was after him. Jordan's criminal activity led to his release on parole on June 17, 2022, after serving time for charges including criminal damage, racially aggravated harassment, and illegal possession of a bladed weapon. One of his parole conditions was regular meetings with a parole officer. However, he violated all terms by missing 2 scheduled meetings and settling into a van at St. Valentine Street near Stow-Treadside, Acres Park, the largest green space in London's Redbridge district. As a result, authorities refused to extend his privileges, initiating the process to return him to custody on June 22nd. They delayed informing the police until 2 days later. Early Saturday morning, June 25th, police visited his mother's house to arrest him, but found he was not present at around 2:30 a.m. On June 26, 2022, the streets of Ilford bore witness to a tragic incident. Zara was discovered on the sidewalk, visibly marked by signs of violence, her belongings scattered around as if her chaotic life had spilled onto the pavement. Her body was bruised, her clothes torn, and her eyes reflected a desperate struggle for survival. A passing woman immediately recognized the gravity of the situation and swiftly began administering chest compressions and CPR, desperately trying to save her. Despite her efforts, along with those of other passers-by and emergency responders, Zara's injuries proved too severe. It was evident that her wounds were life-threatening, and despite all attempts to help, she succumbed to her injuries at approximately 9:58 in the morning. Her death left behind only the haunting memories of a fierce fight for life. Around 11 o'clock that morning, security footage from a nearby park captured Jordan disposing of evidence by discarding his clothing, his demeanor cold and detached. This behavior made it clear that the attack was not a random act of violence, but a deliberate act. The police responded swiftly, visiting Zara's grandmother to identify her from footage obtained at a local bar. When she confirmed Zara's identity, authorities explained what had transpired. Meanwhile, Zara's uncle, Casey Molina, contacted the family, including Aunt Farah, to share the devastating news from Portugal. Overcome with grief, her aunt remembered receiving the call on Saturday night. After breaking the news to her children, Farah immediately flew to London. The entire family was left in shock, trembling with horror, struggling to eat, sleep, or speak, as they found it almost impossible to accept Zara's loss. Meanwhile, investigators began their work at the scene, meticulously collecting surveillance footage to trace the attackers' movements. The bloody fingerprints found near Zara's body, combined with the video evidence, led to the identification of Jordan. Authorities tracked his location through security systems, and shortly after, an officer was dispatched to Gun Hill to confirm whether anyone recognized him. The operation was successful, and officers soon found Jordan sleeping in his van. He offered no resistance during his arrest. Blood-stained clothing and shoes were discovered in his vehicle, which he had been attempting to dispose of. Despite hours of questioning, Jordan remained silent, refusing to disclose his identity or details about his life. As new footage emerged, police pieced together the sequence of events leading to the crime. The investigation also brought to light several errors in how Jordan's case had been handled previously. It was noted that Jordan had been involved in criminal activities since the age of 16, both inside and outside of prison, marking him as a high-risk offender. His history underscored the danger he posed, highlighting the importance of thorough oversight and intervention. Since the age of 16, he had been under supervision, but it became clear that his treatment was inadequate. Authorities should have taken swift action to return him to detention after he missed scheduled appointments following his release, yet they failed to do so. On Wednesday, June 29th, a police statement conveyed the tragic news, prompting Zara's family to express how profoundly devastating the recent days had been. They acknowledged that their loss was irreversible, yet found solace in the kindness and support shown by others, which underscored the enduring spirit of their beloved Zara. Faced with overwhelming grief, the family had much to manage and drew strength from each other. Aunt Farah, who had experience in this field, communicated with the media and coordinated with law enforcement, understanding the importance of maintaining control over the situation and safeguarding Zara's reputation from potential misrepresentations by some media outlets. A preliminary hearing in the Jordan case took place on July 1st, 2022, with a subsequent date set for testimony preparation on September 30th of that year. However, on the day of the trial, Jordan failed to appear due to a positive COVID-19 test, leading to a postponement. On Saturday, July 2nd, Zara's family organized a memorial service symbolically marking her final journey. Many attendees dressed in white, representing a silent procession of remembrance. The event was supported by a coalition of over 120 organizations dedicated to supporting women and combating violence. These groups, many of which had worked closely with Zara, called for justice and accountability, emphasizing the urgent need to address violence against women and prevent future acts of harm. During an initial investigation at the East London court in Walthamstow, crime scene investigator Nadia Purrett expressed concern that local police could and should have acted more decisively to locate Jordan before his attack on Zara. She believed that the jury should consider whether law enforcement and probation staff had fulfilled their responsibilities. According to Nadia, the investigation process was expected to take about a month. On November 16, 2022, Jordan again failed to appear at a scheduled hearing, despite being informed of its mandatory nature. The hearing was then conducted via video call, during which he pleaded guilty. Prosecutor Oliver Glasgow described him as an unsuitable candidate for bail, a view supported by Judge Chima Grove. The judge postponed the sentencing until December 14th. On that date, Jordan once more refused to attend court, yet this did not prevent the court from proceeding with the sentencing. Life imprisonment, with a minimum term of 33 years, was initially handed down for the murder of Zara Alina. The accused and his representatives appealed, leading to a reduction of the sentence to exactly 33 years. The judge explained that Zara, being unconscious at the time, did not experience pain or suffering, which influenced the decision. However, just 4 months later, it was revealed that Jordan had maintained a close relationship with a woman employed at Belmare Correctional Facility in South London. This woman, whose identity remains undisclosed, was not a direct staff member, but was under investigation by the Metropolitan Police on suspicion of misconduct in a public office. Zara's family continues to remember her with deep affection and pride, and they still feel her absence profoundly. Meanwhile, Aunt Farah persists in speaking out against violence targeting women and girls. In March of 2023, she participated in a march organized by various groups aiming to raise awareness about this critical issue. The demonstration moved through West London's commercial district toward Trafalgar Square, with protesters chanting slogans that criticized the lack of action against male violence, equating it with systemic neglect. The tragic loss of Zara Alina has cast a somber shadow over this ongoing struggle, highlighting the pervasive violence that affects many lives and fuels the desire for change. Hello, everyone. I'm Jack, and today I want to discuss another heartbreaking case. Sheila LaBar, a woman with an almost angelic appearance who harbored a dark and dangerous side. Early psychological and physical traumas can have unpredictable effects on adult life. While they often do not lead to cruelty, in some cases, they can give rise to individuals capable of heinous acts. Criminal psychologist Adrian Raine suggests that genetic and psychophysical factors can turn a person into a remorseless killer, as detailed in his book Anatomy of Violence. History is filled with serial offenders who endured brutal childhoods, and Sheila LaBar is often considered among them. Sheila, born in 1958 on the 4th of July in the small town of Fort Payne, Alabama, was the youngest of 3 children. Raised on a farm amid cornfields, her childhood was secluded yet active. Her older sister Lynn recalls her as inquisitive and lively, traits that she later used to lure victims with her charm before committing brutal murders. Despite only 2 crimes being officially confirmed in court, criminologists believe she was responsible for many more. Let's explore her story from the beginning to understand whether Sheila was inherently a monster or if her upbringing shaped her into one. Sheila LaBar's early years were marked by a seemingly idyllic but isolated rural life. Her family's quiet existence was punctuated by her curiosity and social nature, yet underlying traumas from her childhood likely played a role in her later actions. She was a bright, open-minded girl with a creative spirit, eager to be at the center of attention. Gifted with a pleasant voice and charming looks, she might have pursued fame as an actress or singer if her life had taken a different turn. Instead, her name became known through the pages of criminal chronicles, overshadowed by her father's unimaginable cruelty. Manuel Bailey, the head of the family, struggled with alcohol dependence for many years, though it was perhaps the entire household that suffered most from his addiction. His binges transformed him into a ferocious figure prone to abusing his wife and children, insulting, humiliating, and beating them with whatever was at hand. Often he would throw them out into the cold night or lock himself inside, refusing entry, leaving the family to spend nights in barns or open fields. One particularly violent episode saw Manuel hurl dishes and objects at his family during a drunken rage. His wife tried to shield the children, but a flower pot struck her youngest daughter Sheila, causing a serious concussion and leaving a lifelong scar on her temple, which she carefully covered with her hair. Yet, physical abuse and insults were only part of the horror that Sheila and her sister Lynn endured. From an early age, Manuel forcibly subjected them to inappropriate acts. Their mother, perhaps aware but unwilling to confront the truth, never addressed what was happening. Despite this nightmare at home, Sheila excelled academically and dreamed of escaping the farm to make her way in the big city. She was ambitious and passionate about her goal of becoming an actress or a pop singer. With her charisma, striking appearance, and a beautiful voice, she seemed destined for stardom. However, adulthood brought disappointment. At just 18, she left her parents' house, but her dreams were hindered by lack of funds and poor academic results, preventing her from entering university or moving to the city. Instead, she found work as a maid in a hotel, where her older sister was already employed. Sheila's slender figure, big blue eyes, charming smile, and thick long hair drew attention from many men. Over time, she learned to use her attractiveness to her advantage, subtly manipulating her suitors. In the late 1970s, she met a young man named Jonathan Baxter, and they began a romantic relationship. Jonathan was under 20, but already a father from a previous relationship. Despite this, their bond grew stronger, and they soon married. However, their marriage lasted only a few months, ending abruptly when Jonathan discovered something that shattered their relationship. A young wife once mistreated her daughter while her husband was away at work. Jonathan, refusing to stir up conflicts or listen to excuses, simply filed for divorce and expelled his wife and her belongings from their home. He wanted nothing to do with her afterward. Sheila, after the separation, drifted through a series of brief relationships, mostly relying on her partners financially. These affairs rarely lasted more than a few weeks or months. In the early 80s, she met her future second husband, Ronnie Jennings. Their passionate, tumultuous courtship quickly led to marriage, and she adopted a double surname, Bay Jennings. Their relationship was marked by frequent arguments, infidelity, and fights driven by their volatile personalities. Despite this, their marriage endured for over 3 years. In 1984, after yet another disagreement, Sheila demanded a divorce, but Ronnie refused. His refusal was less about love and more about provoking her, aiming to upset her. His plan succeeded, and Sheila spiraled into hysteria. She took a large amount of sedatives and drank strong alcohol in front of him. That night, behind the wheel of her car, she lost consciousness under the influence, veered off the road, and crashed into a tree at high speed. Miraculously surviving, she suffered severe head injury, spending more than a week in a coma. Doctors offered no prognosis. When she finally regained consciousness and began to recover, she was transferred to a psychiatric hospital, where she remained for several months. During her stay, she confided to her sister that an orderly had been persistently harassing her, possibly taking advantage of her vulnerable state while she was heavily sedated. Eventually, Sheila returned to her second husband's home, but her behavior grew increasingly aggressive and threatening. During a heated argument, she attacked Ronnie, stabbing him in the chest with nail scissors. Fearing for his safety, Ronnie filed for divorce and hurriedly left her. After the marriage ended, Sheila sought new companionship through personal ads in newspapers, placing her own advertisements as well. However, no man stayed long. She tended to dominate her partners, suppressing their independence both in intimacy and daily life. One day, a photo of an attractive young woman in the dating section caught the eye of Wilfred Bill Labar, a 60-year-old man. Wilfred had been married twice before and had adult children and grandchildren from previous marriages. Widowed several years earlier, he lived alone on a large country ranch. As a successful chiropractor in Epping, New Hampshire, Wilfred was quite wealthy, yet he felt profoundly lonely and yearned for a strong, resilient woman. That desire led him to Sheila, whose striking appearance and fiery personality intrigued him, offering a chance to fill the emptiness in his life. She had recently met someone new and quickly became convinced that this relationship was ideal for her. To completely captivate him, she began sending him handwritten letters, supplementing them with revealing photographs. Her tactics proved effective, and soon the man named Labar invited her to visit his ranch. Their romance blossomed swiftly. An older man, generous with expensive gifts, lavished her with attention, and by the summer of 1987, she moved in with him. This development flattered the doctor, who now appeared publicly alongside a striking companion half his age, seemingly fitting for him as a daughter. Despite their closeness, he had no intention of marrying her. Unfazed, she took the initiative, changing her name and calling herself Labar. Bill was surprised by her boldness, but did not oppose her actions. Over time, she began to meddle in his affairs, controlling his business dealings and managing his property. Meanwhile, Bill was aging and unable to meet her intimate needs. According to her, he eventually allowed her to see other men, whom she often brought into their home. One of her regular lovers in the mid-90s was Wayne Enos, a younger man from Jamaica, initially hired as a ranch worker. With Bill's consent, possibly under her influence, Wayne moved into the house. By 1989, Sheila and Wayne had formalized their relationship, and the couple continued their connection online. Sheila sent photos of ultrasounds and her expanding belly, claiming she was pregnant. Jerry, her partner, desperately wanted to believe it, convinced he would see her pregnancy even if it wasn't real. Later, Miller recalled that on November 5th, 1999, he received an email, likely from Bruce Miller, stating he knew everything and would prevent the birth of the unwanted children. Concerned, Jerry tried to contact Sheila, who later texted him, saying she needed to leave for a few days and would get back to him. The following day, he learned from Bruce that he had forced Sheila to have an abortion. Accompanying the message were photos of a battered Sheila. She later described standing before a mirror, trying to draw bruises on her stomach. Jerry reached a breaking point. His grief deepened when he learned that Bruce Miller had been responsible for the deaths of his 2 twins and had also abused the woman he loved. Filled with rage and despair, he blamed Bruce for these tragedies. The next day, after reconnecting with Sheila, Jerry confided that he could no longer endure the situation and planned to eliminate her husband. Together, they devised a detailed plan, choosing routes, parking spots, and the best time to carry out their intent. Jerry then made the long drive from his home to Michigan, preparing for what they had plotted. On the evening Bruce planned to leave work, he received a call from Cher, who asked if he could pick up a pizza on his way home. Distracted by their conversation, Bruce didn't notice a man approaching from behind, who suddenly pointed a 20-gauge shotgun at him and pulled the trigger. After committing the attack, the assailant fled, leaving Bruce fatally wounded. Later that night, Cher called Bruce's brother Chuck, expressing concern over her husband's prolonged absence and asking him to check the junkyard to ensure everything was all right. When Chuck arrived, he found Bruce lying on the ground in a pool of blood, shot in the chest at close range with a shotgun. Eyewitnesses confirmed the shooting, but no trace of the attacker remained at the scene. Cher's reaction to Bruce's death was intense. She was heard screaming and crying as the crime scene was quickly secured. Investigators discovered that Bruce had been carrying a substantial amount of cash, leading them to initially suspect a robbery gone wrong, especially since his wallet was missing. Bruce's friend and employee, John Hutchinson, who had recently borrowed $2,000 from him, came under suspicion. Police searched Hutchinson's home, confiscating weapons, but he denied involvement. Despite failing a polygraph, Hutchinson was eventually released, as no conclusive evidence emerged. Other theories, such as the possibility of falsified vehicle identification numbers, were considered but failed to produce leads, and the case was ultimately closed. Meanwhile, Bruce's sister, Judy Miller, observed that Cher's behavior seemed inconsistent with typical grief. Just 2 days after her husband's death, Cher was seen dancing happily in a bar in Otisville, Michigan. 2 weeks later, she was involved with a new boyfriend, a local delivery driver named Jeff Foster, rather than her late husband's friend, Jerry Cassidy. It appeared Cher had moved on quickly, as if she had completed a level in a game, leaving her past behind. Jerry believed that after the murder, Cher would have stayed loyal to him, especially since he had committed the crime for her. However, she gradually distanced herself, and a month later she moved Jeff into the house she had shared with Bruce, severing all ties with Jerry and leaving him devastated. At some point, Cassidy realized he had unintentionally caused the death of an innocent man. Meanwhile, Cher chose a new career path, working as an operator of intimate phone services, leveraging her captivating voice to attract men. Many men, enchanted by her, offered to meet her in person. Among these was Kenny County, a young man of barely 24, who was attractive, friendly, and open-hearted. However, Kenny had a low IQ, making him quite gullible, exactly the type of person Shirla was seeking. Kenny was also very close to his mother, which added a layer of complexity to his character and his interactions with Shirla. Sheila skillfully manipulated Kenny into forming a false sense of connection, convincing him that they shared a special bond. She made him believe their nights together were unforgettable and assured him that their relationship would last forever. This illusion led the young man to think he had found the woman of his dreams, prompting him to inform his family and eventually move into Sheila's house. However, Sheila soon revealed her true nature, transforming their intimacy into a nightmare. She turned one of the rooms into a brutal confinement space where every encounter was marred by violence or worse. Kenny's body bore the marks of this torment, bruises, abrasions, scratches, cuts, and burns, yet he was unable to escape her control. Sheila kept him isolated from his loved ones, forbidding him from seeing or communicating with his family, who could only suspect his suffering. Concern grew among neighbors, who occasionally saw Kenny and were shocked by his frail, battered appearance. A few days before his disappearance, a local store clerk captured a photo of him on her phone. The image revealed a severely emaciated young man with dark bruises under his eye and on his cheek, and a nose that appeared broken, judging by the healing scars. These injuries, inflicted over time, indicated prolonged abuse. The contents of his shopping cart further alarmed staff. He was pushing 2 large fuel canisters, which later turned out to be intended for his own cremation. The store employees, disturbed by his appearance, reported him to the police, fearing domestic violence. Yet, Sheila managed to evade suspicion, and no charges were filed against her. Eventually, Kenny ceased all contact with his family. When his worried mother visited Sheila's residence, the owner responded aggressively, telling her to leave Kenny alone. Subsequent visits yielded the same response, prompting Kenny's family to file a missing persons report, suspecting he was being held against his will at Sheila's country estate, which also housed a home crematorium. When police arrived, Sheila claimed Kenny no longer lived with her, asserting he had run away after his mother's frequent visits. She presented an audio recording in which she asked Kenny if his mother had attacked him, and he quietly confirmed. This explanation seemed suspicious, and the following day, officers obtained a search warrant for the property. Sheila had been on law enforcement's radar before, linked to another mysterious disappearance, yet over the years, she had never been formally questioned, and her house remained unexamined. When authorities arrived at the scene, they found no sign of labor at home, yet they observed several unusual fires burning near the outbuildings. These fires appeared strange, constructed from makeshift materials such as mattress fragments, wooden debris, hay, and soaked with a flammable mixture. One of the bonfires contained what clearly looked like human bones, suggesting the presence of remains. The police called in forensic experts to analyze the scene and gather evidence, but what they uncovered was only the beginning of a far more disturbing discovery. Almost throughout the house, investigators found traces of blood that had been poorly cleaned, creating the impression of a brutal slaughter. The amount of blood was so extensive that it seemed as if a massacre had taken place. Further analysis revealed that the blood belonged to at least 3 different individuals. The bones burning in the fire were identified as belonging to the missing Kenny, whose screams of desperation, pleading, "No, Mommy, no, don't go," still echoed in memory. The full scope of what had transpired hit hard, especially the realization of the harm inflicted on Bruce, his friends, and family. The devastating truth was that they would never see their loved ones again. Bruce, a kind and gentle man, was described by Cher Miller as someone who never hurt anyone and only wanted to love and care for his family. He had even hoped to adopt her children, seeking a genuine family connection. Yet, in DVE Tisiachi Dvatsat DVA, she ordered him to be harmed. In a rare public interview, Cher admitted that Bruce was not involved with any criminal organizations, nor had he ever mistreated her. She confessed to using makeup to simulate bruises and fake ultrasound scans to manipulate Jerry, claiming her actions were not driven by financial motives. Instead, she feared Bruce discovering her true nature, believing it would be easier for him to be harmed than to uncover her secrets. Cher also acknowledged Jerry's struggles with depression and her confidence in her ability to manipulate the legal process, which led her to reject a plea deal that could have resulted in a 15-year sentence, opting instead for a life sentence. She revealed that sharing her story publicly was part of her search for peace, admitting how difficult it was to face herself after everything. Cher Miller remains incarcerated at the Huron Valley Women's Complex in Michigan, where she is ineligible for parole. Her reputation is that of a highly unstable and violent individual, with her third husband, Wayne Annis, claiming she repeatedly urged him to kill Mr. LeBar to seize his property. Despite her defense arguing for her insanity, it was proven that she was fully aware of her actions and the consequences. In July of 2008, she was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of release. All her appeals were denied, and she is now serving her sentence at the Homestead Correctional Facility in Florida. In a quiet Kansas town, a tragic event unfolded that would leave a deep scar on the community. On January 5, 2007, 19-year-old Jod Sanderholm, a dedicated student and talented dancer, disappeared without a trace. That morning, she drove her Dodge Stratus to college for a rehearsal scheduled to end at 10:45. Known for her commitment and warmth, Jod was also an accomplished scholar, earning numerous academic honors and serving as captain of her high school dance team. She balanced her studies with her passion for dance, which she pursued through local classes and her college activities. After her rehearsal, Jod was expected to return home, but she never arrived. Her mother, Cindy, grew increasingly anxious when her calls went unanswered, a rare occurrence for her daughter. Concern mounting, Cindy left work early to check on Jod. Upon arriving, she found Jod's car absent from their driveway and her belongings untouched, her dance uniform still in the laundry, her shower untouched. It was clear Jod had not been home, and her absence was out of character. Her family's worry deepened as they discovered she had not contacted her father or sister, nor attended her noon appointment she was supposed to keep. Desperate for answers, her parents contacted friends, but no one had seen Jod after her last appearance at college. The dance team, which Jod choreographed, was scheduled to perform at a basketball game that evening, a routine she was passionate about. Her absence was inexplicable. She would never have missed such an event voluntarily. As hours passed, the sense of dread grew, hinting at something far more sinister behind her disappearance. This case, which remains unresolved after 16 years, echoes the biblical story of Cain, where a brother's act of violence severed familial bonds. Unlike Cain's biblical exile, the tragedy in Kansas was a brutal, cold-blooded loss of innocence. The community was left to grapple with the horrifying reality that danger can lurk even in the most seemingly safe places. The investigation into Jod's disappearance continues to haunt those involved, a stark reminder that sometimes the most tragic acts are committed by those closest to us. Unable to gather any information about her whereabouts, Cindy and Brian, concerned for their daughter's safety, decided to alert the authorities before she returned home. The sheriff's deputies swiftly created flyers featuring Jody's description and last known location, while also issuing an all-points bulletin for her vehicle. During their inquiries, police learned that Jody had been dating a high school friend named Colby Wilson. When contacted by phone, Colby stated he had been visiting his brother in Texas for several days, which allowed officers to rule him out as a suspect due to his confirmed absence from the area. The following day, January 6th, proved to be particularly significant. Lori Leglighter, Jody's close friend and dance partner since high school, provided crucial information to the investigators. Both had enrolled at CI College, where they studied dance. Lori recounted that she had finished her shift at Sirloin Stockade in Arkansas City around 10 in the evening on Tuesday, January 2nd. As she left work, she noticed a light blue car passing the restaurant multiple times. Later, while heading home, she realized the same vehicle was following her, reflected in her rearview mirror. Concerned, Lori decided to test whether she was truly being followed, turning onto different streets to see if the driver would do the same. To her alarm, he did, which frightened her considerably. In a panic, Lori drove to the local police station and parked nearby, hoping the stalker would leave her alone. When she didn't see him after stopping, she returned home, but soon had to revisit the police parking lot because she spotted the blue car again. She sat in her vehicle for a while, contemplating her next move before finally driving home. Lori explained that she initially chose not to report the incident, dismissing it as a prank, but the situation remained unsettling. On Friday, January 5th, the college's Tigerette dance team was rehearsing, and Lori and Jody arrived around the same time, parking close to each other. Lori recognized the driver of the familiar blue car. He was a local resident named Justin Thurber, 23 years old. Although Lori didn't know him personally, she had seen him several times in the company of his older brother and friends. After practice, both friends were supposed to meet up later, but Jody never appeared. Soon, other dance team members mentioned seeing Justin near the college during the past week, always sitting in his car in the parking lot and watching. Within the first 24 hours of Jody's disappearance, police officers canvassed the city but couldn't locate her vehicle. Arkansas City, surrounded by fields and wooded areas, prompted authorities to bring in aerial reconnaissance to search from above. Because a car's size makes it more difficult to conceal than a person, law enforcement hoped that the aircraft would help locate her vehicle if it was still nearby. Based on aerial analysis of Jody's vehicle, authorities traced her last known cell phone signal to a tower near the expansive sea wildlife area, a dense forested region along the Arkansas River. At this stage of the investigation, only one individual, Justin Eugene Thurber, was considered a potential person of interest in Jody Sanderholm's disappearance. Thurber was identified by Lori later and members of her dance group, yet despite his youth, he was no stranger to law enforcement. 3 years prior, in 2004, Thurber faced charges for illegal possession of prohibited substances. Although he received a suspended sentence, he was released after 3 months. His criminal record continued to grow. In October 2005, he was arrested for theft and violating probation, and in the same year, he faced charges of disorderly conduct. Just days before Jody vanished, on December 31st, 2006, Thurber was detained again for theft, and after posting a bail of $3,000, he was released. The following day, New Year's, he impersonated a police officer, causing public disturbance until authorities intervened. He claimed chest pains and was hospitalized, yet the reasons why he was not detained afterward remain uncertain. It's possible that a relative working for Cali County Police may have influenced this leniency, though this remains speculative. On January 6th, a police officer noticed Thurber's light blue Cadillac parked outside his parents' residence. When questioned, Thurber's father invited the officer inside. Thurber explained that the previous day he had driven to Winfield, a town about 13 miles from Arkansas City, where he met with a friend and 2 acquaintances. They drove around in a vehicle belonging to one of his friends until their car became stuck on a dirt road near Sedale. Thurber claimed he then walked toward Arkansas City, approximately 30 miles away, and after 6 hours, tired from walking, he called his father to pick him up. His father confirmed this story, saying he found Thurber wet and dirty a few miles from CI State Fishing Lake. Thurber also mentioned that his car, left in Winfield, had been returned by friends. Although his account was unconvincing, there was no basis for immediate charges, so the officer departed. Later that evening, officers interviewed Alexis Schwartzel, who had recently ended a 3-year relationship with Thurber. She told them that Thurber often took her to the sea wildlife area southeast of Arkansas City, describing places they frequently visited there. This information, along with other details, added to the ongoing investigation into Thurber's possible involvement in Jody Sanderholm's disappearance. Alexis was informed by authorities that they were investigating the disappearance of Jody Sanderholm. She was taken aback when she recalled that Justin had once confessed to watching Jody from the age of 13, often peering at her while she swam in her backyard pool or peeking through her bedroom window in the evenings, waiting for her to change clothes. When questioned about her breakup with Thurber, Alexis explained that she ended their relationship because he was increasingly abusive and exhibited bizarre behaviors. She recounted that during intimacy, he had choked her unconscious, and he would sometimes challenge her to fights because he claimed it was the only way he could become aroused. As the investigation progressed, it became increasingly apparent to the police that Justin Thurber might be connected to Jody's disappearance. Although no concrete evidence linked him directly, Thurber was detained late on January 6th for violating his bail conditions and for suspicion of trespassing on a college campus where police believed he should not have been. When questioned, Thurber requested legal counsel while officers executed a search warrant at his parents' house. They seized his shoes, which were still damp and drying on a towel. His father confirmed he helped clean the mud off them. The clothes Thurber wore when picked up were also recovered, though he had likely washed them by then. The following day, a team trained in tracking in rough terrains began searching the sea wildlife area. They found footprints matching Thurber's shoes along with smaller prints, indicating other individuals had been present. As evening approached, the search was paused with plans to resume the next day. On the return trip, some searchers stopped near the CI County State Fishing Lake after hearing Thurber was wet when his father had picked him up. There, they discovered muddy tire tracks, shoe prints near a public restroom, and a pair of flip-flops in a chemical toilet. Further evidence included cut-off sweatshorts, Jody's driver's license and social security card, her black leotard, a jacket with her first name, a vehicle floor mat, and a car seat cushion. The flip-flops matched the impressions found earlier in the wildlife area. Over the next 2 days, investigators continued their search around the fishing lake and wildlife area. On January 9th, sonar specialists examined the lake's bottom and located Jody's submerged vehicle. Sadly, that same day, the family's hope was shattered when her remains were recovered beneath a pile of debris, confirming the tragic outcome of the investigation. Authorities investigating the case of Jody's disappearance uncovered a complex web of evidence linking Justin Thurber to both her vehicle and her person. The car, which had been submerged in the lake for over 3 days, posed a significant challenge, as water intrusion likely destroyed much of the forensic evidence. Nonetheless, investigators dedicated extensive hours to examining the interior, ultimately discovering a short strand of hair. Forensic expert Carrie Melton, head of the DNA testing laboratory, performed mitochondrial DNA analysis on this hair and concluded it was almost certainly Thurber's. Additionally, samples taken from Jody Sanderholm's right biceps and the right side of her chest were tested by private DNA analyst Barbara Lee. Her findings indicated that Thurber could not be excluded as a contributor to the DNA mixture, with a devianost-deviat percent probability that the DNA belonged to him or someone very close to him. Cell tower data further supported Thurber's involvement, revealing that on the day Jody vanished, both their phones were in the same locations at the same times. Lori Leglighter, Jody's closest friend, confirmed seeing Thurber in the college parking lot on that day. When authorities reviewed security footage from the college, they verified Lori's account. Thurber was present during the rehearsal period and departed simultaneously with Jody. The footage showed Thurber following Jody in his light blue Cadillac, strengthening suspicions that he had tracked her from college to her home. Further evidence emerged near the Sanderholm family mailbox, where investigators found a shoe print matching the sole of Thurber's sneakers. This, combined with footprints at the wildlife area, painted a clearer picture. Footprints of Thurber's shoes and smaller impressions, likely Jody's, were discovered side by side along the trail leading to the fishing lake. At one point, investigators observed that Jody's footprints were abruptly interrupted, while Thurber's footprints continued deep into the woods, suggesting he had carried her further on his own. Footprints of Thurber's shoes were also located at the site where Jody's body was eventually recovered. The trail of evidence indicated that Thurber's footprints and Jody's had been closely linked, with her trail ending abruptly and his continuing into the woods. Witnesses and investigators noted that Thurber's account of being with 3 other individuals on the day of her disappearance was false, as those persons denied seeing him that day. Furthermore, Thurber's story about his car being stuck near Cetaphil was contradicted by the lack of any verifiable location. To clarify his movements, Thurber was taken to Cetaphil to show the authorities where he claimed his vehicle was immobilized. However, he was unable to pinpoint the exact location. At the police station, Thurber volunteered to undergo a graphology test and requested the presence of his relative, Chad Monroe, who worked with the county sheriff's office during the process. The evidence presented was deemed sufficient to charge Justin Thurber, who maintained his innocence throughout. The judge set his bail at $1 million. Thurber's legal team argued that he was mentally impaired and unfit to stand trial, but their claims were ultimately unsuccessful. Despite having completed high school and attending college for a period, the court found no grounds to accept his defense of severe intellectual disability. During the trial, the medical examiner who performed the autopsy testified that from the initial examination, it was clear that Jody Sanderholm's final hours had been extremely distressing. Her entire body, including her face, bore numerous bruises and abrasions, with unmistakable signs of strangulation on her neck. The medical examiner confirmed that strangulation was the cause of her death. While not all details of the autopsy are suitable for description, it is evident that the crime was particularly brutal. The motive behind the assault was rooted in sexual desire, and Thurber was accused of using a stick to commit the act. At the trial, in addition to Thurber's former girlfriend, 6 other women testified, each alleging that he had stalked them. One of these women, a co-worker, recounted how she had to call police after Thurber waited for her in the parking lot after work, leaving her frightened to walk alone to her car in the dark. She also described how he left a rose and a note under her windshield wiper expressing his interest in her. Multiple witnesses observed Jody Sanderholm's vehicle on January 5th, 2007. Carrie Morris, a friend of Jody, noticed her sitting in the passenger seat as their cars passed in Arkansas City during the early afternoon. She described the driver as a large man and attempted to contact Jody by phone but received no reply. Additionally, 2 other women reported seeing a vehicle resembling Jody's on a dirt road south of Arkansas City around 3 in the afternoon. In February of 2009, a witness identified the driver as Thurber during court proceedings. The jury unanimously convicted Thurber on all charges and recommended a sentence of capital punishment. Anticipating the judge's decision, Thurber's legal team attempted to negotiate a plea deal, proposing that he plead guilty if spared the death penalty. However, Jody's family strongly opposed such an agreement. Ultimately, the presiding judge considered the jury's recommendation and sentenced Thurber to death by lethal injection in March of that year. In 2008, Kansas enacted the JOD Act, broadening police powers concerning stalking suspects and expanding the range of behaviors classified as stalking. Since his sentencing, Thurber has persistently pursued appeals, with his attorneys arguing that he suffers from a mental impairment. In 2018, the Kansas Supreme Court delayed Thurber's execution, citing a ruling by the United States Supreme Court that executing individuals with mild developmental disabilities is unconstitutional. Jody's mother, Cindy Sanderholm, attended the original trial and noted that a competency hearing had found Thurber fully capable at that time. 11 years after her daughter's tragic loss, she expressed concern upon learning Thurber had written letters to other young women while incarcerated, interpreting this as evidence of his mental fitness. "That's disturbing," she remarked. "It shows he's aware enough to communicate and reach out, knowing exactly what he's doing." She reflected on Jody's plea for her life, emphasizing that her daughter was denied a second chance. In August of 2021, the Kansas Supreme Court clarified that a law passed the previous year allows Thurber, who is appealing his sentence, to request legal assistance from the district court for post-conviction DNA testing. This means that even after 16 years, the final outcome remains unresolved. It's noteworthy that Kansas has not carried out any executions since 2065, despite reinstating the death penalty in 1994. Since then, 9 others have been sentenced to death, but none have been executed. A spokesperson for the Kansas Department of Corrections explained that there is no current timetable for executions, which have been on hold for decades. Jody's sister, Jennifer Aldridge, expressed her surprise that, over 20 years after the death penalty's return, no concrete plan for executions has been established. She believed such matters should have been addressed long ago, suggesting that even if Thurber's sentence is upheld, it's unlikely to be carried out in the foreseeable future. According to a DVE Tisiachi Cheddar-Nadsat report from the Kansas Legislative Post Audit Committee, the El Dorado Correctional Facility in Butler County, Kansas, houses inmates in maximum security segregation at a significant expense. Each inmate in administrative segregation costs nearly $4,500 annually to maintain. Moreover, the financial burden extends beyond incarceration. Taxpayers also bear the high costs associated with prosecuting cases involving the death penalty. When the death penalty is pursued, the average legal expense per case rises to approximately $395,000, compared to about $100,000 when it is not sought. This financial strain adds an additional layer of hardship to an already burdensome justice system, especially for families affected by such cases. For instance, Brian Sanderholm expressed his anguish over the financial toll, stating that every week he sees his paycheck and feels the weight of taxpayer money supporting the incarceration of the individual responsible for his daughter's suffering. His wife, Cindy Sanderholm, emphasized that the law should be adjusted to reflect what justice truly demands, suggesting that the perpetrator deserves the ultimate consequence. Brian posed a poignant question. "If it were your child, what outcome would you desire?" Sadly, Cindy Sanderholm passed away in December of 2022 at the age of 63, leaving her family to grapple with their loss. The tragic case of Kelsey Smith exemplifies how well-intentioned laws and policies can sometimes hinder justice rather than facilitate it. Kelsey, a young woman just after her 18th birthday, went shopping for a gift and vanished without a trace. Her abduction occurred in broad daylight at a busy shopping center, captured by numerous surveillance cameras. Despite the extensive footage, authorities faced obstacles when a mobile phone company refused to disclose her location, citing privacy laws. In reality, this refusal delayed the investigation, and by the time her whereabouts were determined, it was too late to save her. Kelsey's case, which ended with her body showing signs of violence outside the city, sparked widespread outrage and prompted national and international media coverage. The inability to track her movements through her cell phone during the critical hours led to a nearly week-long search. This tragedy prompted public debate and resulted in legislative changes, including the passage of a law named in her honor, aimed at balancing privacy rights with the need for timely access to critical data. Examining the circumstances of Kelsey's abduction reveals that she was taken just outside a shopping center, under the watch of numerous security cameras. This raises questions about whether the tragedy could have been prevented and highlights the importance of effective law enforcement tools. The perpetrator, Edwin Roy Hall, known as Jack, was widely regarded as a loving husband and caring father. Born on April 17, 1981, in a small town, his true personality and motives remain a focus of investigation as authorities seek to understand how someone so seemingly benign could commit such a heinous act. Located near the border of Missouri and Kansas, in the city of Lee's Summit, Edwin was the second child born into a low-income, severely disadvantaged family. His childhood was marked by hardship and neglect, as his parents often consumed large amounts of hot drinks and illegal substances, neglecting their responsibilities and mistreating their children. Edwin later recounted that, at the age of 5, he was subjected to inappropriate acts by his uncle, his father's brother. Although he could not definitively confirm or deny this, many believed the claim was fabricated by his lawyer to evoke sympathy and reduce his punishment during trial. By the age of 6, Edwin found himself in an orphanage after his father was incarcerated and his mother lost her parental rights. Over the following years, he moved through several foster families, but each placement ended with his abandonment, and he was returned to the orphanage. His uncontrolled aggression and cruelty became evident early on, especially towards animals, which he tortured and watched suffer. He also displayed a blatant disregard for authority, frequently disobeying foster parents, stealing, and running away. His last foster family returned him to state custody after he attacked his stepsister with a knife. Fortunately, the incident was not prosecuted, and he was spared further punishment. At age 15, Edwin again drew police attention after he deliberately struck a much younger orphanage peer with a baseball bat. Despite these troubling behaviors, as an adult, he had no criminal record and appeared to have matured, showing signs of responsibility and stability. By 20, he married a woman named Alita, with whom he had a son about a year and a half later. Edwin worked transporting goods in an old Chevrolet truck from the 70s, earning a reputation among neighbors as a quiet, humble, and friendly family man. However, beneath this facade, he led a secret life that only surfaced when he was brought to justice for serious crimes. The victim was Kelsey Smith, born on May 3, 1989, in Overland Park, Kansas, the second most populous city in the state. She was the third of 5 children in a close-knit family headed by Gregory and Missy Smith. Growing up alongside her older brother Steve, sister Lindsay, and younger siblings Katie and Zach, Kelsey shared a strong bond with her family. Gregory Smith, her father, was a former military officer and a veteran of the United States Navy, who later served over 20 years in law enforcement before retiring. Her mother, Missy, dedicated her life to healthcare, working for many years at a local hospital. From a young age, Kelsey skillfully balanced her professional pursuits with her role as a caring mother, creating a warm and inviting home environment. As a child, she was lively, outgoing, and passionate about performing arts. She loved singing and dancing, attending a music school where she mastered several instruments and actively participated in school theater productions and choir events. Her enthusiasm extended to sports, especially gymnastics and soccer, which she often enjoyed alongside her father and brothers at various matches. A dedicated friend with a sharp sense of humor, Kelsey was talented across many areas and knew how to leave a positive impression on those around her. Her deep affection for animals fueled her childhood dream of becoming a veterinarian, a goal she hoped to pursue after college. During her final years of high school, Kelsey worked with the local orchestra, playing the clarinet at city events. This experience allowed her to save enough money in just 6 months to purchase her first car, a Odna Tisiacha Deviat Sotvosim Desiatsem Buick Regal. Her parents, preferring her to have a newer vehicle, offered to contribute financially, but she insisted on buying her first car with her own savings, valuing independence. The Smith family prioritized their children's education and overall development, instilling discipline alongside love and care. Clear rules governed their household, such as sharing plans and notifying family members if they would be out late. Kelsey was always punctual, informing her parents of her whereabouts and companions. In her senior year, Kelsey entered a romantic relationship with John Beersmith, a year her senior. She described their connection as a profound, movie-like love at first sight. They celebrated New Year's of 2007 together and became inseparable. John was a serious young man who treated Kelsey with respect and kindness. Both families supported their relationship, not opposing their union. That same month, Kelsey turned 18, graduated from high school, and was accepted into a prestigious college in Kansas to study veterinary medicine. The days that followed marked some of the happiest moments of her life. Sadly, those joyful days were cut short, and her promising future was tragically interrupted. On the day she graduated from high school, Kelsey reveled in the festive atmosphere, savoring joyful moments and romantic outings with her beloved. She felt she had achieved everything she desired: acceptance into her dream college, a promising relationship with a young man about to propose, and a future filled with happiness. It seemed her life was on the cusp of a perfect chapter. However, everything changed on June 2nd, 2007, when Kelsey mysteriously vanished from a mall parking lot. She and John had been preparing to celebrate a special milestone, their 6-month anniversary, marked by John's plan to propose. He had arranged a beautiful custom-made ring and reserved a romantic dinner for two, envisioning a memorable evening. Unaware of his intentions, Kelsey was also eager to find a gift to surprise him, styling her hair, applying makeup, dressing up, and heading to a nearby Target store, just 10 minutes from home. That evening, around 7 o'clock, she called her mother to say she had found a gift for John, but needed a romantic gift bag from the shopping mall across the street. Missy suggested she check the mall, confident it would have what Kelsey sought. Grateful, Kelsey promised to be home soon, as John was scheduled to pick her up at 8. That was the last time her mother heard her voice. Kelsey never returned. When John arrived with a bouquet of flowers, he was stunned to find her missing. Her parents, equally alarmed, knew her absence was uncharacteristic. She never ignored calls or texts. She had disappeared in broad daylight from a busy area, yet no one seemed to have noticed anything unusual. A search began. Her father, a former police officer, along with his 2 eldest children, scoured the mall and surrounding areas. They found her car parked at Oak Park Mall, sparking hope she might still be inside. Yet, after thorough checks of all floors, stores, and conversations with staff and security, they concluded she was not there. The vehicle appeared untouched, with no signs of struggle or violence. Her father, cautious from his law enforcement background, decided not to disturb the car, knowing it could be part of a crime scene and that preserving evidence was crucial. Her parents reported her missing to authorities that same day, but initial responses were hesitant. Because Kelsey was 18, officials explained she wouldn't be officially considered missing until 24 hours had passed since her disappearance. Despite the delay, her family remained determined to find her, holding on to hope that she would be found safe and soon reunited with those who loved her. After insisting on an immediate search for his daughter, The man relied heavily on his old connections to expedite the process. He also inquired at local hospitals to see if any women matching her description had been admitted. That very evening, Kelsey's family and fiancé were interviewed to establish their whereabouts and rule them out as potential suspects. As part of standard procedure, investigators reviewed surveillance footage from a nearby Target store. The footage showed Kelsey entering the store, browsing, making a purchase, and then leaving while talking on her phone. During the call, she asked her mother for directions to find a gift bag, then followed her mother's advice by heading to the mall across the street. She simply drove out, turned around, and parked at the Oak Park Mall near the side entrance close to the wall. Her vehicle was thoroughly examined by experts and appeared untouched externally. Inside, the gift she bought for John was on the passenger seat, and her backpack containing personal items, a tablet, and a wallet with roughly $300 in cash was in the back. This suggested that robbery was unlikely, as her attacker only took her credit card and phone, which were kept in her pocket. No signs of a struggle, blood, or damage were found at the scene, and no foreign fingerprints were present, except for one on the driver's seatbelt, which did not belong to Kelsey, her family, or her fiancé. Tracking her mobile phone signal could have helped narrow the search area, but by that time the device was no longer accessible, presumably turned off or damaged. Despite this, investigators hoped to determine her last known location. However, Verizon, the wireless carrier, delayed providing the necessary data, promising to investigate but ultimately dragging out the process. Back in 2007, telecommunications companies could withhold subscriber information from law enforcement without a court order, citing privacy laws. Even in cases where a person's safety was at risk, such exceptions were not automatically granted. A disturbing detail emerged from the surveillance footage. A mysterious individual was seen following Kelsey like a shadow. At first, he did not stand out because he kept his distance and did not attempt to interact with her directly. The man was Caucasian, appearing to be in his early to mid-20s, with short dark hair and a light beard. He dressed casually in a plain white t-shirt and black shorts. He entered the Target store shortly before her departure, but his presence remained largely unnoticed until closer inspection revealed his unsettling presence. Approximately half a minute after the girl entered the store, a mysterious man began to follow her through each section she visited, maintaining just a few meters' distance. Surveillance cameras captured his movements clearly, and during the subsequent trial, the prosecution described his behavior as resembling that of a predator stalking its prey. After she left the store, he made sure she was alone, then trailed her to the Oak Park parking lot in a Chevrolet truck. It's likely he overheard her conversation with her mother, as he was positioned directly behind Kelsey while she was on the phone, which might have revealed her plans to visit a nearby shopping center. Unfortunately, Smith parked her car in a poorly chosen spot near a side door adjacent to a storage area where shadows obscured her vehicle, making it difficult to identify details on the footage. While Kelsey remained seated in her car, the truck pulled up beside her, and a figure dressed in a white t-shirt and black shorts emerged. The stranger approached from the driver's side, and under what seemed to be a threat, she likely got into his vehicle, which then drove away in an unknown direction. Thanks to Gregory Smith's connections and experience, the media quickly picked up the story, understanding that increased public awareness could boost the chances of locating their daughter and identifying the responsible individual. The coverage extended beyond national outlets to international media, including the popular program America's Most Wanted. When surveillance footage revealed the stranger's face, the images were broadcast widely, encouraging viewers to come forward if they recognized him. That very evening, police received numerous calls from people claiming to have seen the man in various cities and states. Although many reports were mistaken, each was carefully investigated. On June 6th, a woman named Mrs. Miggs contacted authorities, recognizing her neighbor Edwin Hall from the footage. She had initially hesitated to report her suspicion, but upon learning that the truck was a vintage Chevrolet, similar to Hall's old 1970s model, her doubts were confirmed. Hall was then located at Longview Lake, driving his classic Chevrolet, and was taken into custody. Several key developments marked the investigation's progress. First, authorities obtained vital information from Verizon regarding the last known location of Kelsey's phone signal, narrowing the search to a specific cell tower and establishing a radius for further investigation. Approximately 45 minutes after beginning the search, the lifeless body of a young woman was discovered in the brush near Longview Lake, Missouri, about 30 miles from where she had been abducted. The medical examiners concluded that she had been violently assaulted and strangled with her own belt. Her body was found without clothing, except for the belt around her neck used in the attack. After the assault, her body was callously discarded among the bushes, only partially covered by dry branches. Over the next 4 days, it was exposed to the June sun, and insects and wildlife caused severe disfigurement, making identification difficult. Nonetheless, tests confirmed that the remains belonged to Kelsey Smith, the missing young woman. The second major development on June 6th was the arrest of the primary suspect. When police arrived at his residence, he remained remarkably calm, acknowledging that friends called him Jack and agreeing to give a statement at the station. During questioning, he identified himself as Edwin Hall and showed a photograph of Kelsey. He claimed he had never seen her before, even when shown surveillance footage depicting him closely following her. He insisted he had only visited the Target store for personal reasons and had not noticed her presence, dismissing the footage as a strange coincidence. Confident that he left no trace, Hall believed he could evade accountability. His van was clean, and he had assaulted the victim using contraception, leaving no DNA evidence. Nevertheless, Hall agreed to cooperate, offering to provide his DNA and fingerprints. Crucially, his thumbprint matched one found on the victim's car seat, serving as key evidence. During a detailed search of his home, authorities uncovered a hidden air pistol with Kelsey's DNA traces on the barrel. As a result, Hall was formally charged with kidnapping, assault, and the ending of the young woman's life. Since Kelsey was abducted in Kansas but her body was found in Missouri, questions arose about jurisdiction, which was significant because it could influence her potential sentencing. Given the gravity of the case, Hall, after consulting with his lawyer, decided to fully admit his guilt and reveal details of the crime, hoping for a reduced sentence. He recounted how he had noticed Kelsey entering the store, followed her, and overheard her phone conversation about visiting a shopping center across the street. He then tracked her to a secluded parking spot near a side entrance, where he approached her from his vehicle. In a disturbing case, a man waited with a pistol for his victim to return to her vehicle. As she was entering the driver's seat, she had already unfastened her seatbelt, but he prevented her from closing the door and refused to let her buckle up, leaving his fingerprint on it in the process. He then pressed the pistol's barrel into her mouth, coercing her to move into the driver's seat of his vehicle under threats. Once on a secluded stretch near the state border, he ordered her out and led her into nearby bushes. There, he assaulted her, strangled her with a belt, and concealed her body beneath branches. Afterward, he meticulously cleaned his vehicle's interior to erase any traces of her presence, including fingerprints and DNA, and hid the pistol with Kelsey's saliva at his home, confident it would remain undiscovered. When questioned about his motives, he offered no clear explanation but callously remarked on her attractive legs. During the investigation, several other women and girls came forward, revealing that Hall had victimized them as well. As a result, additional charges of corruption of a minor, harassment, and theft were added to the case. His defense attempted to appeal to the court's sympathy, emphasizing his troubled childhood, past victimization, and lack of parental care, but these arguments proved ineffective. Throughout the proceedings, Hall's wife attended silently, refusing to defend her husband. On September 16th of 2008, a judge in Johnson County sentenced Edwin Roy Hall to 27 life terms without the possibility of parole. After hearing the verdict, he apologized to the victim's family and broke down in tears. He is currently serving his sentence at the Hutchinson Correctional Facility in Kansas. The case drew significant attention to the role of telecommunications companies, particularly Verizon, which hesitated for 4 days to release data on the last known location of the victim's phone. Citing privacy laws and the need for a court order, the company delayed providing the information, though it was later determined that this delay would not have changed the outcome in this case. Nonetheless, this incident spurred the enactment of the Kelsey-Smith Act in Kansas in 2009, requiring telecom providers to share subscriber location data when someone is at risk of serious harm or death. By 2012, 29 other states, including Missouri, adopted similar legislation, and by 2021, Oklahoma, Montana, and Illinois also passed laws modeled after the Kelsey-Smith Act. Since then, these laws have helped save many lives, such as in 2015, when police in Kansas used the law to locate a stolen vehicle with a child inside. In 2021, authorities in Illinois used a precise method to locate a child's mother by tracking her mobile phone signal, which she had left on the back seat of her vehicle. This same technique was employed to rescue a young woman who had attempted to take her own life by jumping from a cliff. Although she sustained serious injuries, swift identification of her phone's location enabled rescuers to reach her in time. Interestingly, the family of the young woman chose not to seek the naming of any law after their loved one. Instead, the idea originated from Kansas Senator Rob Olson, who proposed it as a tribute following her ordeal. In her memory, her family established a foundation dedicated to supporting crime victims and raising awareness among youth about safety and prevention issues. Moving to a different story, we recall a tragic incident involving a man named Benjamin Blue Burr Rank, a dedicated reptile breeder who was just 29 when he was found deceased at his well-known snake farm. Born in August of 1987 in Missouri, Ben grew up in the countryside alongside his family, sharing a close bond with his older brother Sam. In 1989, the family moved to a scenic farmhouse where Ben's fascination with snakes began to develop during outdoor adventures. A devastating event occurred in September of 1992 when an explosion caused by a gas leak destroyed their home while the family was away. Forced to live in a trailer for a time, they faced further hardships when Ben's mother, Kim, was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. Despite these struggles, their tight-knit family supported each other through every challenge. In 2002, they relocated to a new residence, where a special room was built for Ben to house his collection of snakes. Kim's battle with cancer ended in 2009, leaving her sons with the promise to care for their farm and pass it on to future generations. Ben's passion for reptiles grew stronger over the years, leading him to establish Rank Reptiles, a venture that gained international recognition. His dedication was evident. He prioritized the well-being of his snakes over profit. His farm bred a wide variety of reptiles, including some of the rarest subspecies on Earth, with a single collection of pythons valued at over $1 million. Ben was a solitary man, deeply committed to his craft. In 2010, Ben met Lindley at a social gathering, and their relationship quickly deepened. Within weeks, he introduced her to his brother, Sam, and Sam's fiancé, Eli. Lindley and Eli, both having children from previous relationships, found common ground and soon became part of the family. Their bond marked a new chapter in Ben's life, intertwined with his lifelong passion and the enduring support of those around him. In March of 2012, Lindley and Ben found happiness together on a snake breeding farm, living as a close-knit family. That year, Lindley gave birth to their daughter Amelia, and Ben was overjoyed at becoming a father. Despite their joy, they soon faced new hardships. Ben's father, Frank, had previously engaged in fraudulent stock dealings to cover medical expenses and Kim's treatment, which cast a shadow over their lives. Just a day before an FBI visit to the farm, Frank took his own life, ending the investigation and leaving his sons to cope with another profound loss. Despite their grief, Ben and Sam supported each other, managing to move forward. Ben inherited the family house and farm, while Sam received a sum of money that far exceeded the property's value. Both brothers had their own families and children, yet they continued to live together harmoniously in their parents' home. Sam invested his inheritance into restoring the farm, and initially, life seemed stable. However, financial disagreements soon arose, creating tension between the siblings. By April of 2014, Ben decided to formalize his relationship with Lindley, and they married, making her a full member of the family. Together, they launched a second venture, a spa named Sensia Spa Incorporated. Unfortunately, under Lindley's management, the spa struggled financially, leading to frequent disputes. Despite her efforts, the business couldn't cover all expenses, which caused friction. During this period, Ben allowed his brother Sam and his wife to sell some furniture to ease their financial burdens, but this only deepened the rift. In an effort to improve their financial situation, Ben planned to sell some rare reptiles for a substantial amount. Tragically, that plan was interrupted by a devastating incident at the farm. On June 8, 2017, Lindley entered one of the farm's barns and found Ben lying unconscious in a pool of blood. She immediately called her brother Sam for help, reporting that her husband was unresponsive. During the call, Lindley dropped the phone and ran outside while Sam stayed on the line, confirming that Ben had passed away. Sam speculated that a snake might have caused the tragedy. Law enforcement officers were called to the farm for the first time in years. The scene was daunting. Over 3,000 snakes coiled within the facility, and the officers hesitated to enter, wary of a potential attack from a deadly viper believed to be the assailant. When the sheriff's deputy, Dov Kaller, arrived and examined the scene, he noticed shell casings on a shelf at waist level, an indication that something far more sinister than a snakebite had occurred. No weapon was found at the scene, yet it was clear that Ben had been shot multiple times in the back and head. Strangely, none of his relatives heard any gunfire or saw the attacker. Following the incident, Sam and Lindley were taken for questioning by the sheriff's office. Lindley suggested that Sam might be involved in her husband's death, citing a possible motive. Ben wanted to sell their house, but Sam opposed the idea. To clarify his innocence, Sam underwent a lie detector test, which he passed. With no concrete evidence against them, both Sam and Lindley were released. The investigation then shifted to uncover who might have wanted Ben dead, with various theories proposed. The first was robbery. However, it was dismissed since none of the rare snakes or valuable items were missing. A few days later, police re-interviewed Lindley and tested her hands and clothing for gunpowder residue, but the results were negative. After Ben's funeral, Lindley cut off communication with Sam and Eli, and she proceeded to sell her husband's business, inherit the house, and file a claim for a life insurance payout of $1 million. She planned to sell the family home for around $740,000. When Sam's family learned about the insurance claim and the quick sale of the business, they grew suspicious of Lindley. Sharing his concerns with investigators, Sam suspected his brother's wife. During a subsequent interrogation, Lindley admitted to having a complicated relationship with Ben and occasionally meeting a man named Arik. However, Arik had an alibi, so he was eliminated as a suspect. Lindley's revelations were startling. About 3 years after their marriage, she had been unfaithful to Ben, with at least 2 men. Messages between her and Ben indicated that he suspected her infidelity, which had strained their relationship. On October 5, 2017, the Missouri State Highway Patrol administered a polygraph to Lindley, who failed the test. Despite this, without solid proof linking her directly to the crime, she was released. The investigation into Ben's death slowed but did not stop. Later, authorities discovered that a month before Ben's passing, Lindley had attempted to harm him. She fabricated a story claiming Ben was a cruel oppressor who physically abused her, sharing this with a coworker at a spa salon to seek support. Together, they plotted to poison Ben with a protein shake laced with 15 Percocet pills, but he unknowingly drank it and became severely ill. Fortunately, he survived, unaware of the poisoning. Lindley was interrogated a total of 6 times during the investigation. Unexpectedly, on January 14, 2020, a witness from a state prison came forward. Brandon Blackwell claimed to know details about Ben's death, asserting that Lindley had shot her husband and conspired with her ex-boyfriend. Blackwell also revealed that he had dated Lindley while she was still married to Ben, adding a new layer to the case. 5 years after Ben's passing, Lindley and Brandon had a child together, but by Divi Tisiaci Deviat Natsat, they had separated. Brandon later claimed that Lindley confessed to involvement in the ACT and had plotted with her former coworker Ashley Shaw and another ex-boyfriend Michael Humphrey. Several years after Ben's death, Lindley, Humphrey, and Shaw were arrested, yet during questioning, Lindley and Humphrey pointed fingers at each other, leaving the question of who actually pulled the trigger unresolved. According to Michael's account, on the day of the incident, he went to the farm with Lindley, who asked him to pose as a buyer. He put on gloves and was supposed to shoot Ben, but couldn't go through with it. Ultimately, Lindley took the gun and shot her husband herself. The investigation into Ben Rennick's death stretched over 3 years. On January 16, 2020, arrest warrants were issued for Lindley, Humphrey, and Shaw. Shaw was granted immunity in exchange for her cooperation and testified that Lindley had expressed her desire to end her husband's life. She claimed Lindley had complained about Ben's constant belittling, demeaning, and even physical abuse, which led her to believe that divorce might result in losing custody of her children. Fearing this, Lindley devised a plan to poison Ben with a lethal mixture. During interrogations, Lindley and Humphrey accused each other of the murder. In October of 2021, Humphrey faced trial in the county. His defense aimed to reveal the murder weapon to support a lesser charge of second-degree murder, despite no conclusive DNA evidence being found on the firearm. To reduce his sentence, Humphrey agreed to cooperate, revealing the weapon's location. His cooperation resulted in a life sentence on a reduced charge with the possibility of parole. On January 3, 2021, Humphrey was sentenced to life imprisonment. The case against Lindley Rennick began on December 6, 2021, when she was charged with her husband's death at his snake breeding facility in New Florence. Court documents indicated that the plot originated at Lindley's spa salon. The probable cause statement noted that Ben was aware of Lindley's financial struggles and that she feared he might take custody of their children. This led her to fabricate a story of domestic abuse. The initial attempt to end Ben's life involved a protein shake laced with narcotics. Search warrants for Ben's and Lindley's Facebook accounts confirmed the story and Ben's awareness of her financial issues. The court proceedings reconstructed the events of the day Ben was killed, including details of the sequence of actions. On that day, Michael Humphrey picked up Lindley from the spa salon, while Shaw sent text messages from Lindley's phone to hide their true location and intentions. Based on court documents, Humphrey planned to end Ben's life and asked Elle to carry out the act after firing several shots. In his haste, Humphrey collected most of the spent casings but missed some, and he also disposed of Lindley's clothing. After returning to the spa, where Lindley took a shower, he avoided leaving gunpowder residue on her hands and clothes, making detection more difficult. During the trial, defense attorney Catherine Berg questioned Lindley Rennick about her personal and family background, education, relationships, and her history with her ex-boyfriend Michael Humphrey. The aim was to portray her as a victim of domestic violence. However, no evidence supported such claims, weakening this defense strategy. Michael Humphrey was allegedly part of a group that plotted to end Ben Rennick's life. Lindley described her relationship with Humphrey as codependent, involving his drug dealings and her own struggles with addiction. She ended their relationship at the end of DVTCH Desiat, but reconnected with Humphrey about a month before Ben's death. Lindley firmly denied the prosecution's allegations, including claims that Humphrey attempted to poison Ben with a narcotic-laced protein shake. The couple faced financial and marital struggles as the spa was underperforming, and their plans to profit from snake sales had yet to materialize. In court, Lindley admitted to having extramarital affairs and expressed deep regret for her actions. When considering divorce, she felt uncertain about whom to turn to, given her father's history of divorce and his strong opinions on the matter. She sought support from former boyfriends and reestablished contact with Humphrey. During cross-examination, Lindley confessed to knowingly participating in her husband's death and hiding Humphrey's involvement. She cited marital problems, including disputes, alleged physical and sexual abuse by Ben, and the stress from his snake breeding business. She feared Ben's reaction whenever she mentioned divorce. On June 8, 2017, Lindley brought Humphrey to the farm. She claimed her visit was not intended to harm Ben, but to discuss ending their marriage. She mentioned taking out the trash from Ben's area before entering the nursery, where she saw Humphrey and Ben washing their hands. She described being unable to hear their conversation, as she was preoccupied with how to tell Ben she wanted a divorce. Her voice trembled as she recounted witnessing Humphrey draw a pistol and shoot her husband. The reality struck her hard when she returned to the snake breeding facility and found Ben's body. She immediately called Ben's brother, Sam, who arrived shortly after. They checked for signs of life, but the scene was tragic and irreversible. Ben's pulse and breathing remained uncertain, sparking hope that he might still be alive. Lindley expressed remorse for not alerting authorities sooner about her earlier visit to the breeding facility with Michael Humphrey. The life insurance policy Ben had secured years earlier could have yielded a payout of $1 million, yet Lindley waived her claim during the court proceedings. In her testimony, she admitted to ongoing deception, explaining she was merely trying to escape the harsh truth of what had transpired. She clarified she never wished her husband's demise. Following the verdict, Lyle Rank's defense team chose not to pursue a new trial, and no appeals were filed against her conviction. Lindley Rank later filed a lawsuit against Blackwell, claiming his statements about her involvement were false. However, prosecutor Kevin Zellner challenged her account during cross-examination, questioning why she didn't check on her husband after hearing gunfire or call emergency services. He also inquired about her continued friendly messages to Blackwell and Humphrey after the incident, despite her ongoing lies even when first responders arrived. During sentencing for second-degree murder and armed criminal action, Lindley Rank broke down but maintained her innocence. On December 9, 2021, she was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 13 years, with an additional 3 years for armed criminal activity. Judge Kevin Crane later imposed a total sentence of 16 years. Sam Rennick's final words expressed deep disappointment, highlighting his astonishment that a life in Missouri could be valued at just 13 years. Ben Rank, a young man full of hope and potential, found himself in a tragic situation due to her actions. Now, shifting to another heartbreaking case, we look at Mary Goff from County, Maine. Described as cheerful, easygoing, and the glue of her family, Mary was the youngest of 5 children. Her mother regarded her as a best friend and confidant, a relationship any parent would cherish. Mary was straightforward. If she was happy, she made it known. If upset, she expressed it openly. In 1993, at the age of 19, Mary worked at the Huntsman Pub in Gormanstown. There, she met Colin Wan, a 22-year-old man who was somewhat formal and serious, yet appeared to have his life together, working in information technology. By 1995, their relationship faced difficulties, leading to a breakup. Mary was devastated, unsure of what she had done wrong. Her mother reached out to Colin for answers, but he responded dismissively, claiming it was none of his concern how Mary was coping and that the breakup was not his fault. Mary's initial realization of Colin's capacity for coldness marked a turning point in her life. After gathering herself, she shifted her focus toward building a better future. She secured a position as a secretary at a production company responsible for the film Rob Roy *. When her contract ended, she was offered a job in Scotland by the same company, but she declined, possibly still holding on to hope of rekindling her relationship with Colin. 6 months later, her wish was granted, and Mary and Colin reunited. This time, their bond appeared more serious. In 1997, Colin purchased a house on the outskirts of Dublin, in B. Briggan, and soon after, Mary moved in with him. Their happiness seemed genuine. The following year, while on holiday, Mary and Colin got engaged. She was overjoyed and eager to marry immediately, but the wedding was postponed for another 2 years. Finally, on September 9, 2000, the couple exchanged vows. Yet Mary did not seem the radiant bride one might expect. During the ceremony, she was seen outside the church with her new husband, suddenly overwhelmed and bursting into tears before rushing back inside. Her family and friends hurried after her, concerned, but Colin remained unfazed, believing her tears stemmed from missing her late father, who had passed away in 1989. Mary later confided to a friend that she felt overwhelmed by the attention, but there was more beneath the surface. In January of 2001, as a new year of fresh beginnings began, Mary decided to get her life in order. She visited her doctor and was eager to start a detoxification program she had scheduled. However, her plans were abruptly cut short. On March 1st, shortly after midnight, Colin made a distress call to emergency services. The operator guided him through performing CPR, and an ambulance arrived swiftly. They found Mary wrapped in a duvet with a towel under her head. The responders noted her body was unusually cold, which was strange given she had just fallen down the stairs. They also observed blood coming from her nose, yet there was no blood on Colin, who claimed to have administered CPR. The position of her body was strange, lying straight with her head at an odd angle, and there were no signs of broken bones. Evidence was mounting that something was amiss. Mary was declared dead at Beaumont Hospital in Dublin, and her family was notified. When her mother approached Colin, he, with his head in his hands, simply said she was gone, without showing much emotion. Her mother was devastated, unable to believe her only daughter had died, especially after hearing Colin's cold, matter-of-fact account. An autopsy was performed by the state pathologist, Dr. Mary Cassidy, to determine the cause of her sudden death. The investigation revealed signs of severe trauma, hemorrhaging around the tongue and eyes, along with a distinctive mark on her neck, complemented by carpet burns consistent with being dragged down the stairs. Remarkably, there were no head injuries or broken bones, leading the pathologist to conclude that Mary was likely strangled. However, the absence of ligature marks encircling her neck, with bruising confined to the left side, raised questions about the nature of her death, as this pattern is unusual for typical strangulation. The case was officially classified as a murder, and it soon reached the desk of Detective Pat Murray. The following morning, he brought Colin in for questioning at Balban Garden Station. Colin's demeanor was notably unshaken, showing no signs of grief. Throughout the interview, Murray maintained a calm tone, giving no indication that the inquiry was now focused on a possible homicide. To put Colin at ease, he described the questioning as a routine procedure aimed at clarifying the events leading to Mary's death. Colin remained consistent, asserting that he was the only person present with Mary at the time of her passing. He recounted that they had been watching television together when she decided to go upstairs for a shower. Moments later, around midnight, he heard a loud thump and hurried to see what had happened. He found Mary at the foot of the stairs, and in the chaos, he went upstairs to fetch a towel, as there was a significant amount of blood. He then wrapped her in a duvet to keep her warm until help arrived. The investigators informed the Gioa family that Mary's death was now being treated as a murder, requesting they keep this information confidential for the time being. The forensic team examined the house thoroughly, discovering bloodstains on the bedroom walls and on the upper landing. The hallway phone showed no signs of blood transfer or mucus, indicating it had not been touched after the incident. They also checked the security alarm to determine its last activation, finding that no windows or doors had been opened after 9:55 p.m., which suggested the scene had remained undisturbed since that time. When the couple returned home that evening, there were no signs of forced entry, indicating that no third party was involved in their search. During their investigation, authorities uncovered a life insurance policy Colin had taken out on both himself and Mary in June of DVE Tisiachi, just 3 months before their wedding. Once approved, Colin used the policy to secure 400,000 Irish pounds, which Mary would receive if Colin died, and vice versa. What was peculiar about this policy, aside from its substantial amount for such a young couple, was its limited validity, only 10 years, after which it would become worthless. A week after the incident, Mary's funeral was held at the same church where she and Colin had married 6 months earlier. Colin feigned deep grief, a display that many found embarrassing, yet her family chose to overlook his outbursts to avoid jeopardizing the investigation. The detective then turned to Colin's work computer at the bank, which he quickly wiped clean. Fortunately, the bank had backed up all office computers on a secret server, revealing a trove of incriminating evidence. Among the findings were 22 searches related to strangulation, suffocation, and oxygen deprivation, all conducted by Colin weeks before their wedding. Further investigation uncovered Colin's activity on chat sites under the alias Celtic Tackler, where he described himself as a widower and a proud Irish man. One notable contact was with a divorced woman in Wales, whom he claimed had died in a car accident. He had told her he was coming into a large sum of money and that they planned to meet in March of 2001. She was deceived into believing his fabricated story, and when the detective revealed the truth, she was left devastated. Additionally, authorities found that Colin had researched American killers, particularly Henry Wallace, active in the 1990s. Wallace's method involved wrapping a cord around a towel to strangle victims, leaving no ligature marks and keeping victims warm to obscure the time of death, an important forensic detail. This discovery proved crucial. The detective examined Colin's home thoroughly, searching for something that could have served as a ligature. Numerous items were tested, but it was the dressing gown that caught attention. Tests confirmed the presence of Mary's blood on the fibers of the cord, which was most likely hidden under her head during the attack. The evidence suggested that Colin had worn the murder weapon around his waist while paramedics tried to save Mary. With this substantial evidence, Colin was formally charged with Mary's murder. His trial was scheduled for October of 2003. Due to the 2-year wait, Colin was released on bail, which required him to live with his parents, report daily to the police station, pay a bond, and surrender his passport. Following the loss of his passport, Colin faced unemployment at the bank and needed to find alternative income sources. To make ends meet, he rented out the house he once shared with Mary. Despite adhering to bail conditions, Colin harbored secret plans. In May of 2002, his family reported him missing. An investigation at Balboa Police Station revealed he had not been seen for 2 days, raising questions about whether he had truly fled or simply disappeared. The security personnel had failed to monitor the situation adequately, leaving the case unresolved. Colin's vehicle was later discovered just outside Dublin, at Hohead. The car was parked neatly, with the keys still inside and an empty bottle of gin on the passenger seat. A window was slightly open, but no immediate signs indicated his whereabouts. An alert was issued, and a search was launched, including media broadcasts and notifications to airports and ports. Despite these efforts, no trace of Colin was found initially. He was placed on wanted lists for suspicion of serious offenses, and Interpol was contacted, followed by Europol, which monitors individuals across Europe. Over a year passed without any sign of him. Then, a breakthrough occurred when a man in Spain, a former school friend of Colin's, learned he was wanted. This acquaintance befriended a bartender at a local pub and inquired about the man he knew as Keen Sweeney from Galway Island. The bartender confirmed his identity, and the man contacted the police. Authorities in Spain placed Colin under surveillance, and an arrest warrant was issued. Spanish police raided the bar, apprehended him, and transported him to the civil guard station in Madrid. Colin denied his identity, but fingerprint analysis confirmed his identity, matching the prints sent from Ireland. Under pressure, he eventually confessed. The next step was extradition, an unprecedented process at the time, to bring him back to Ireland. Detective Murray flew to Madrid to escort Colin home. During their conversation, Colin explained how he had obtained a passport 7 months earlier by using the identity of a man of similar age and build, knowing that this individual did not travel. With the fake passport, Colin traveled by train to Belfast, then flew to London, followed by a flight to Barcelona, and finally took a boat to MCA Island in Spain. Upon returning to Ireland, Colin's brother, who worked at the airport, was positioned to identify him. When Colin arrived, security personnel approached his brother and asked if he intended to confront him. The brother responded calmly, denying any hostile intent. The two men faced each other briefly, exchanging a silent stare before Colin lowered his head. While awaiting his trial in custody, authorities continued gathering information, determined to uncover the full extent of his actions and motives. In preparing for the trial, investigators needed to uncover every detail about Colin, especially his past relationships. Many still believed in his innocence, unaware of the full truth about who he truly was. One person the detective located was a woman who had once been involved with Colin before he met Mary. She described him as extremely violent and controlling, to the point that she left her district to escape him. Their relationship began at a disco, and for 6 months he courted her. However, once he gained her trust, his true nature emerged. He exerted total control over her life, dictating who she could speak with and how she should dress. His behavior grew physically abusive, and she became pregnant, terrified to reveal it. Colin reacted furiously, insisting she must not have the baby. One night, he brought her vodka and aspirin, attempting to force her to abort. She managed to avoid taking the aspirin, but swallowed some vodka. That night, he physically assaulted her, kneading her stomach, which resulted in her losing the pregnancy. On the 12th of April, 2005, Colin appeared in court for the first day of his trial. The families were present, including the Goff and Whalen families, who believed Colin was innocent and unaware of his true nature. They thought the authorities were unjustly targeting him and dismissed the allegations as lies, clueless about who Colin really was. When the judge asked Colin to stand and inquired whether he had been responsible for Mary Goff's death, he responded with a guilty plea. The Goff family, watching from the gallery, was stunned. Their jaws dropped and they were left breathless. Relief washed over the Goff family, knowing they wouldn't have to endure a lengthy trial. Mary's brother expressed that justice had finally been served, feeling a sense of closure. During sentencing, Colin's lawyer read a letter of apology, but it was evident that it was insincere. Colin's remorse was solely for getting caught. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, where he remains to this day. He is supported by an English partner he met while incarcerated in MCA. She recently returned to her homeland to facilitate visits. She has stated her intention to stay with him. It is clear that Colin Wan never truly loved Mary. In fact, he likely despised her. He took her life to start anew and secure financial gain. His history suggests a deep-seated hatred for women, viewing them merely as tools for his purposes. The prison guard has warned that upon release, expected soon, Colin could pose a serious threat to any woman he encounters. As of 2022, more than 21 years have passed since Mary's death. She was a beautiful woman whose loss profoundly affected the local community. Due to Ireland's small, close-knit nature, such tragedies leave a lasting mark on everyone. When events like this occur, they are remembered for a lifetime. This is the story of Neil, Twisty, and Rachel Souza, a tale that captivated a nation with its mix of love, deception, and tragedy, ultimately shattering the illusion of a perfect life. Neil and Rachel appeared to be a happy couple, blessed with a newborn and living in harmony. Neil, originally from Britain, worked in the tech industry, while Rachel, an American mother, diligently cared for their daughter. Despite their outward happiness, underlying tensions simmered beneath the surface, leading to a devastating outcome. Neil was born on September 18, 1978, in Worksop, Nottinghamshire, to Clifford and Ivan. Raised in modest circumstances, he had a younger brother named Russell. His father transitioned from working as a miner to a labor advisor, while his mother was employed as a school cafeteria cook. After completing high school, Neil attended the University of York, studying electronic engineering and business management. There, he met Rachel Souza, an American student studying abroad. Rachel, from Kingston, Massachusetts, had attended Silver Lake Regional High School before enrolling at Holy Cross College in Worcester. During her year at York University, she joined the rowing team and met Neil. Neil was known for being reserved and somewhat shy, often keeping to himself, whereas Rachel was lively, outgoing, and popular within their community. Her American background added a distinctive charm, making her a bright presence on the team. As their relationship grew, friends like Benjamin Pryor, a close college friend, observed their interactions as joyful and natural, perceiving them as a genuinely affectionate couple. While Neil worked at a defense technology firm in Malvern, Rachel pursued a career in education. She completed her studies in 2002 and began teaching English, drama, and theater at St. Augustine's Catholic High School in Reading, demonstrating her passion for inspiring young minds through the arts. Neil jokingly described his job as making bombs, but he was deeply committed to his work. The couple became engaged, with Rachel describing Neil as the most amazing man they had ever met. Despite their happiness, Neil was not entirely content living south of the Atlantic. In August of 2003, Neil and Rachel married in Plymouth, United Kingdom, and in Massachusetts, USA. Their wedding was followed by a reception in the UK in November. Neil shared glimpses of their early married life on a family website, including memories from a trip to the Mediterranean during Christmas of 2004. In April of 2005, they welcomed their daughter, Lillian Rose, a milestone that profoundly changed their lives. Wanting a better future for their family, they decided to move to the United States. Initially, they lived in Carver, Massachusetts, with Rachel's mother, Priscilla, and her stepfather, Joseph. On January 12, 2006, they purchased a 5-bedroom colonial-style home in Hopkinton, situated on a quiet cul-de-sac with only 8 neighbors, offering a peaceful environment close to the city. Their new residence, costing $1,500 monthly in rent, reflected their desire for stability. Neil faced difficulties finding work as a computer programmer and IT specialist, which caused financial strain. To supplement their income, he began selling PC parts on eBay, but his business ran into problems with unfulfilled orders, attracting the attention of eBay investigators. It was uncovered that Neil operated multiple accounts under different names during this period. Additionally, he managed a website called Million Maker, further complicating his financial situation. A website based in the United Kingdom once promoted a scheme promising quick wealth for adults involved in the entertainment industry. The site claimed it could generate a guaranteed monthly income of $6,000 within half a year. However, it was eventually shut down. Meanwhile, Neil was actively seeking romantic connections through various online platforms. He frequented several websites, including Adult Friend Finder, where he reached out to multiple women via email, expressing his interest in forming intimate relationships. During a police investigation, authorities uncovered incriminating evidence on Neil's laptop, including his online profile. This profile revealed his interest in meeting women from the United States of different ages, with a particular mention of wanting to verify rumors about American women's supposed superiority in intimacy compared to women from other countries. Neil also indicated a desire for straightforward relationships, suggesting he was looking for quick and uncomplicated encounters with like-minded individuals. In the weeks leading up to the tragic events involving Rachel and their daughter Lillian, Neil engaged in disturbing online searches. These included inquiries about methods to kill with a knife, alongside more routine searches related to employment, travel, and get-rich-quick schemes. During this period, Neil visited his father-in-law, Joe Matarazzo, who was a member of the Old Colony Sportsman's Club in Carver. Neil had previously stored a .22 caliber revolver at Joe's house and had received shooting lessons from him. He devised a plan to steal a firearm from his father-in-law's collection. Neil traveled to the Matarazzo residence, retrieved the weapon from a hidden spot within the house, and drove back to Hopkinton with the gun in hand. Once home, he discreetly concealed the firearm, waiting for the right moment to carry out his violent intentions against his family. On the evening of Friday, January 20th, 2006, Neil entered the master bedroom where his family had been living for just 10 days. His wife Rachel, age 27, and their 9-month-old daughter Lillian were sleeping in their new 4-poster bed. Neil crept inside and shot Rachel in the head, then turned to shoot Lillian, who was lying beside her mother. The bullet passed through Lillian's small body and pierced Rachel's left breast. Later that same day, while his in-laws were still at work, Neil returned to Carver, where he retrieved the firearm from his in-laws' house without cleaning it. He later claimed he had gone shopping at Staples that Friday. Upon discovering his family's bodies, Neil drove back home and then returned to Carver to dispose of the weapon. His actions indicated an attempt to cover his tracks, as he did not contact emergency services. Afterward, Neil drove to Boston's Logan Airport in the evening, making 2 ATM withdrawals totaling $800. An additional 3 withdrawal attempts for $420 were declined. The following day, Saturday, January 21st, Neil purchased a one-way ticket to London, traveling without any luggage around 5 o'clock in the evening. On that Saturday evening, Neil boarded a British Airways flight departing from Boston at 8:15 p.m. Earlier, shortly after 7, he had invited several neighbors over for dinner. Joanna Gatley and her sister Maureen arrived at Neil's house only to find it locked with lights on inside. Concerned, they tried reaching Rachel's mother, who had also planned to visit that day for lunch, but were unable to get through. Alarmed, they contacted emergency services around 8:30. When police arrived, Sergeant Michael Sutton described the scene, noting he could see into the bedroom where a large unmade bed was piled with bedding. Aside from the disheveled bed, everything else appeared normal. After conducting a search, officers locked up the house and left, continuing their patrol. Despite the investigation, the Gatley sisters remained deeply worried. So distressed that they decided to wait outside in their car overnight, they endured the cold and made several trips to a gas station bathroom while awaiting any updates. The following morning, the sisters managed to access the house using a garage door code they had obtained from a neighbor. Inside, they found dishes and leftovers in the kitchen, indicating the family had recently eaten. The bathtub still contained water, suggesting the couple had bathed their infant daughter. They checked the main bedroom, then Lillian's bathroom, where classical music played softly, and finally the living room. Soon after, Rachel's mother and stepfather arrived. After assessing the scene, they agreed it was necessary to report the family as missing to the local police. Sergeant Sutton returned for a second search, and as he entered the basement, he detected a strange, unpleasant odor that hadn't been present earlier. Following the scent through the house, he eventually found Rachel and Lillian in the main bedroom, lying on the unmade bed covered with clothes. Rachel's arms were stretched over her infant's chest, with her feet curled beside her. Both were dressed in pajamas. Autopsy reports later confirmed Rachel had died from a gunshot to the head, while Lillian had been shot in the torso. Evidence showed Rachel's DNA on the gun barrel and Neil's on the grip. Neil, then 27, was considered only a missing person during this period. About 36 hours after returning to England, Neil visited his parents, Cliff and Ion. He had been driving around and spent the previous night at a hotel. During that visit, he confided to them that he had discovered the bodies of his wife and daughter. On Monday, January 23, 2006, Neil engaged in a lengthy phone conversation with Hopkinton police, which lasted for 2 hours. The recorded conversation between Neil and Massachusetts State Trooper Robert Manning was played during the court proceedings. Neil explained that upon discovering the bodies, he was overwhelmed with fear and hurried to be with his family. He recounted to authorities that he lacked the resolve to harm himself with a knife. Neil also told police that he drove the family vehicle to his father-in-law Joe Matarazzo's home in search of a .22 caliber revolver, but found the house locked, leading him to decide to return to England to be with his parents. On January 26, 2006, U.S. law enforcement officials traveled to the United Kingdom to interview Neil. The next day, after consulting with a lawyer at his residence, he chose not to cooperate with the American detectives at the U.S. Embassy in London, despite being present voluntarily. Rachel and her daughter Lillian were laid to rest in Evergreen Cemetery in Kingston, Massachusetts, buried together under the surname Souza. Although around 500 people attended the funeral to pay their respects, Neil was notably absent, and his name was not included on the shared headstone. During the burial, Neil sent a single orange rose and a white lily with a note that read, "My orange rose and my lily for always," signed with the name Soko. After returning to the United Kingdom, Neil appeared to resume a normal routine in February of 2006. While media attention remained outside his parents' residence and workshop, he went to Notting Hill for dinner with his former crew team from York University, followed by a movie outing. About a week after the funeral, on February 8th, the Middlesex County District Attorney's Office issued an arrest warrant for Neil. The following day, he was detained by London's Metropolitan Police at Royal Oak Station just as he was about to board a train. During his arrest, authorities found a notebook in Neil's possession in which he detailed plans to sell his account to the highest bidder. The notebook also contained expressions of affection for his wife, referring to her as his dearest and closest friend, along with a note about his orange rose and lily. Additionally, Neil had drafted 2 letters to the editor to share his perspective on recent events, seeking to explain his feelings and intentions. In one letter, he inquired about the potential monetary value of exclusive rights to his full account. Ultimately, Neil decided not to contest the extradition process, and he was returned to the United States on February 15th. He appeared in Framingham District Court, where he was held without bail at Middlesex County Jail in Cambridge, Massachusetts. On March 28th of 2006, Neil was formally charged with a serious offense related to the case. In December, DVE Tisiachi Shest, Neil and Twistle faced multiple serious charges, including 2 counts of murder and illegal possession of a firearm and ammunition. Despite these allegations, he entered a plea of not guilty. Nearly a year later, while detained at Middlesex County Jail, authorities discovered letters Neil had written to his parents and legal team. These messages revealed Neil was experiencing deep depression and hinted at possible suicidal thoughts. As a result, he was transferred to Bridgewater Hospital for psychiatric evaluation before being returned to Middlesex County. Forensic psychiatrist Christopher Cordless diagnosed Neil with Asperger's syndrome, a conclusion supported by Dr. David Holmes. In June, DV Tisiachi Vosum, after several delays, jury selection began for Neil's trial at Middlesex Superior Court. Concerns arose about the case's high profile and whether Neil could receive a fair hearing. The trial officially started on June 2nd in Warren, Massachusetts, with Elliot Weinstein leading Neil's defense team. Weinstein attempted unsuccessfully to challenge the prosecution's plan to introduce DNA evidence and also sought to suppress other evidence obtained without a warrant. Throughout the proceedings, Neil chose not to testify or call witnesses, and observers noted his lack of visible emotion. On June 25, 2008, Neil Twistle was found guilty of the 2 murders and unlawful possession of a firearm and ammunition. The court sentenced him to life imprisonment without the chance of parole. As he left the courtroom, Neil was overheard telling loved ones in the gallery, "I'll be all right." Initially held at Sawa Baranowski Correctional Center, Neil later fell victim to a manipulative ploy in August when he shaved his head in an attempt to gain protection from a white supremacist prison gang. Instead of safety, the gang threatened his life, prompting Neil to be placed in protective custody. In December, he was transferred to Old Colony Correctional Center in Bridgewater, Massachusetts, a medium-security facility, for his safety amid credible threats. The tragic loss of Rachel and her infant daughter left a deep void in the hearts of those who knew them. Their untimely passing serves as a stark reminder of lives cut short too soon. In the wake of this tragedy, the community united to offer unwavering support and comfort to the grieving families. Their collective strength and resilience highlight the enduring compassion and solidarity that define humanity in times of hardship. Souza's story serves as a profound reminder of the hidden struggles that often lie beneath outwardly flawless lives. The legacy of Rachel and her daughter urges us to stay alert to signs of distress in those around us, encouraging us to offer kindness and support whenever possible. Their experience underscores the importance of valuing every moment shared with loved ones, reminding us to cherish the time we have together. Ultimately, their journey acts as a compelling call to foster empathy, provide assistance to those in need, and cultivate genuine appreciation in our daily interactions.